Hello.
Hello.
Blackbird.
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Wonderful.
Got some power off. Stellar.
I love that. Like, that's been in my rotation.
1000%.
It's good.
All right, let's see who's all joining us. There should be a couple of people showing up as per invite. Squirrel Lover is here again. Hey, welcome back.
There's Druid Drummer.
Evening Moon, how are you? Or evening y'all, I suppose. Look at you being all lit up today.
I'm not lit up.
No, I mean the actual lighting. It was just really bright for just a hot second.
Oh, yeah.
Chops, how are you? Waiting for a few people to show up. Hang out with us for just a little bit until we get going.
We'll do this. Maybe I won't have the surges as I turn away from the camera.
Kosh, hello. Is the music bed actually coming through?
A little bit.
Kinda? Sorta? Yeah, okay, good.
I can hear.
Not as song as my head. Yeah. It's a good one.
It is. This is the Muddy Waters one, isn't it?
Oh. It's a whole chill mix playlist by yours truly. I'm jamming. All right. Keep on jamming. All right. Where's our panel at? Where are my people? Yeah. Let's see. My lighting is way too bright. I notice.
I turned mine up so I wouldn't have the flares.
I think I'm actually going to have to turn mine down. Just hang with me for a second.
Okay. It's okay. Every show has gremlins from time to time. Oh, God. It's just me and 99 people in the chat. Hi. Just going to smile and be pretty. Hey, Morgan. How you doing, dear? Hey, Desmoid.
Ree, how are you? All right. Let's see who's all rolling in. Well, Nemo, come on up, my friend. Swarge is here.
Hey, Nemo.
How are you?
Hello.
Nemo, what is happening?
Not much. It's Friday. Trump's
New on
been
TikTok from
indicted.
Oklahoma.
Say what?
Hello, Oklahoma.
There's somebody brand new from Oklahoma. Welcome to the dysfunction.
Oh, nice.
Former Oklahoma. Hello.
We'll step out the room.
I have never been west of the Mississippi River. I think the furthest west I've been is like Tennessee.
Hi guys, I'm just checking in to say hey.
Hey, Spar.
What's up?
How you doing?
Everybody, stop what you're doing. Just give a hand to Watch Bar. He's the man who keeps our back safe. Thank you so much, my friend.
Hell yeah.
I got you.
And also, by the way, I'm just going to throw you under the bus here for just a hot minute. If it hadn't been for you, today's DeSantis segment would not have happened. So thanks for pointing me in this direction.
So, anyways, you guys have fun. Nemo, don't be nuts. All right. You look beautiful, Professor, as always.
Oh,
kick some ass.
Thanks, baby.
All right. I'll see you guys on the other side. It's not even on yet. I know. It's just, it feels natural. I sleep with it in now. Stupid.
Oh, my.
I'm kidding. I don't really. It falls out. Okay. Later, guys.
Wait a minute. Was that Nemo with no shirt on? What the hell?
What is
Look.
I had to shave. I got to go to work.
Okay. As the one woman here, I'm just going to go.
Yeah?
All the sexy beasties in these windows.
Sorry, Professor.
Work it, babies.
Can I get my retina replaced now? Oh, brother.
Yeah, no, I was.
Luckily, it's at the beginning. You can just cut it out.
I had to get dressed and be presentable.
All right, let's get Kasali here for just a second.
Hi, Kasali. Oh yeah, right. Whole bunch of shirtless men. Like the viewer count would just shoot through the roof.
Yeah, we have to even out the panel.
Hey y'all.
So we did have quite some invitations out for individual contributors. Some of them just last minute declines. Others had better plans that they were willing to scrap. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Like she wanted to scrap her musical tickets to just show up. It's like, no, that's not happening.
She needed to go to the show. She had to go to the show. Yeah.
I mean, Chicago is important. Honestly, the last one that I went to is gonna make me sound so posh. All right. So I was in England, right? So this was 5 years ago. Holy shit. I was in England,
my friend.
Yeah. And I was with my ex, and we were in London, and we went to, now this is going to make me sound dumb. I cannot remember the name of the opera house, but it's like it's the big one in London. Whatever that one is. And they were doing Phantom of the Opera.
Not Manchester, right?
No. Hold on, let me see. London Opera House. Is it literally called the London Opera?
I just talked about it the other day to someone.
The Royal Opera House. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yes,
yeah.
Royal.
So,
that's it.
Yeah, so it was the Royal Opera House in Covent Gardens, and we watched Phantom of the Opera. Now, here's the thing. I've went to like musical theater before. I've watched them. There's a difference because like I'm in Georgia, right? Best I'm gonna get is like, you might get some regional talent or whatever. When you're in London, you get global, worldwide talent, just internationally known talent. And holy shit, it was so good. It was so good. Oh, so good.
So jealous.
Yeah.
Callie, how are you?
Yeah. Good. How are y'all? I can't stay for very long. I just wanted to pop up and say hi to everybody since you invited me. So you guys, I love y'all. Wish y'all a good live.
Thank you.
Howdy.
Hello.
Well, it should be, and we might have to restructure this live a little bit because it was originally planned to be more on the communications and organizations and how to register for 501c4s and, how to do really important shit just to, get stuff done. But it seems that we've lost a couple of people who originally said that they would have time, but such is the nature of things, right? Yeah. But let me just lob it off over just, to Nemo. Yesterday's conversation on your lives surrounding, of course, the idea of indictments and hard time and prison jumpsuits and everything else. And today we'll find out that, DeSantis is hot on the trail to change legislation in Florida. What's your take, my friend?
Did that come out today? I didn't see your thing about DeSantis. What's the news? I haven't been on TikTok for most of the day.
Okay, we pass the phone back over to Professor so he can enlighten everybody.
So basically, there is Ash. All right. Basically, the idea was that. Hello.
Hi.
Somebody's dying in the background. Hi, Ash.
No, that was my son. I'm going to drop out, but I love you guys, and y'all have a fantastic evening, okay?
Tell Katie to give you loves for me.
Thank you for having me up. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Anytime. Anyways, I kind of sort of used my very dysfunctional 8-ball a couple of weeks ago and just looked at Florida legislations, 99.012. that essentially says nobody can run for any other office while they are in a publicly elected position. And it didn't really take that much. Forecast was, he's gonna just have somebody propose something that amends that. Come to find out, I think it was SPB 7050 that was introduced today. And essentially it is a one-line bill that says that the legislator will look at the election procedures and who is eligible for what and under which circumstances. That's sort of in the nutshell. And of course, it is absolutely targeted to change, modify, throw out altogether 99.012 and open up the doors for DeSantis to run. That's why I was really surprised when he said, well, we're just not going to get involved. And then whatever he said today.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it lines up perfectly with what we were talking about last night. I'm gonna dig deep and find my video because I guarantee once that happens, my prediction window is gonna be spot on. So basically, what that means is DeSantis is. I mean, obviously he's running. This is the final thing, the final domino that has to fall. Once that is repealed, he will probably announce within a month of it happening. So everybody, it's gonna happen probably anywhere from April at the earliest, which means literally tomorrow, sometime this coming month, or June at the latest. But it will be that time frame. And yeah, I think that my guess is that it's really going to depend on how. I think he's going to pay very close attention, and by he I mean his campaign team, because they're going to be smart. They're going to pay very close attention to how Trump's New York trial dates are structured. So right now we've got the indictment. We have a confirmation that the indictment, the arraignment, I should say, the arraignment will occur Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. So we have a hard date on that. Now, after that is done, then there's like any number of things relating to the trial. So I don't think that Trump is going to be like put in jail. I'll probably make a video on like the steps that are going to occur. But basically, DeSantis' team is going to pay very close attention to that trial date, and they're going to use that as a springboard because right now Trump is weak because he's got this legal shit. And so you get people who aren't crazy, like the non-crazy ones, the moderates who are just like Republicans who always vote Republican. They are going to be looking at Trump and thinking, wow, this he's got some legal trouble. I don't know. I kind of want DeSantis. There's already a ton of Trump supporters that I've talked to just in lives and stuff. And I always ask them, like, are you going to vote for Trump in 2024? And they're like, well, if there's not a better option. And they always say DeSantis. It's there. It's happening. So Trump is weak right now. And DeSantis will exploit that by timing his announcement around Trump's, legal issues. So probably within days of like some legal issue. It probably won't be the arraignment, but something unfolding within the next 2 months. That's definitely what's going to happen.
Digital sister in the house. Hello again. Welcome back. Good to see you. Good to have you. And just chime on in whenever. Basically, premise for tonight was originally, and we may have to modify this as we go. Obviously, the world changes within minutes these days, not just actual days or weeks, what have you. The original premise was to figure out how do we organize, what type of means of communications do we need to actually organize across demographics, which I think is going to be instrumental going forward. The organization guru, as far as 501s and everything else is concerned, is definitely Ash. And the idea of how do we possibly get across lines, so to speak, and involve every single demographic that feels like we're divided, but I wonder whether we're actually all that divided. And that's obviously where our digital sister comes in play. You can tell us a whole lot more whether we can and what we need to do to bridge that perceived divide and whether we actually have it to begin with. And all this is geared towards the idea that we are running at 250 miles an hour, breakneck speed towards the cliff of fascism. And the only demographic that usually survives fascism is the ones that look like me. And ideally also sound like me, because I have the necessary accents to make fascism a really cool thing. And I don't want that. So this is where we are. Ash, you are in the hotbed in the center of Florida. Is there anything that you have heard, anything that has come to your attention?
I mean, excuse me. How long do we have?
As long as you need, my friend. Go ahead.
I mean, it's just important for people to understand that, how do I say this? I remember a long time ago, a couple years ago on Facebook, somebody made a post about something, and they live in Brooksville, Florida, which is on the other coast. It's like a little bit rural, still got oak trees and pine trees, stuff like that. They were making a very political post, Republican, whatever. And I was like, dude, and I know this person. His wife was my counselor when I went to wilderness therapy. Okay, I've known these people since I was 14. I'm 44, okay? I live in Palm Beach. I've been in the nonprofit space for 25 years. My clients have been billionaires and high visibility people, high profile people. And I said, you realize that all of this is a spectacle, because I was just at an event last weekend with XYZ. They're buddies. Like this is what they do. And he said verbatim, I'll never forget it. He said, great. Next thing you're going to tell me is that you know Santa Claus. So that's the mindset for a lot of people. It's safe to stay complacent. Once we acknowledge someone else's pain, it instantly holds a mirror up to our own biases, our own weaknesses, strengths, all of those things. And it's important for people to remember that people can only meet you as deep as they've met themselves, period. And I feel tired, not because, yes, it's moving a million miles an hour, and I'm just tired of being on the offense or defense. I don't know. I don't do sports. I'm tired of responding to stuff. I'm over it. I do action. I'm ready to go. And for me personally, and I mentioned this before, I have never been this poor in my entire life. At one point, I'm very good with money. I saved. I had almost 6 figures in the bank one time. It was amazing. I framed the screenshot I took of my bank balance one time. Now I have nothing. So I enjoy doing this work and finding holes in a lot of these arguments and all of this rhetoric. And it's difficult. My phone's dragging. It's difficult for me to meet my basic needs. So it's important as we're developing these things and as we're creating these things to not only think about, okay, well, what is it that we want as a community, as a collective, outside of responding to stuff, because I'm sick of responding to stuff. Let's just peacock. We've got to peacock. And how are we going to take care of the people that are currently in the infrastructure, doing the work, and all of that stuff. So my goal is to help people create PACs, political action committees, continue to share people, these lobbying groups that we keep hearing, oh, the lobbyists. Well, I literally looked up who the lobbyists are. I know all of them. I looked them all up. They have a conference. They just had people that just like to complain, but no actions. They just like to run their mouth, and it's tiring. Anyway, that's about it. I don't know what else to say.
I can give you a little bit of data as far as action is concerned, and this is of course not anything that's generalizable or anything that is truly of I would just say far-reaching value, considering the size of my account. But the couple of things that I posted, which was the call script as well as the form letter, had combined 1,500 downloads.
That's amazing.
Now, whether they were used, modified, thrown out, read, not used, I have no idea. But it is indicative enough that an account of, I would just say, marginal size can get 1,500 downloads, from people who have some level of interest in actually taking action. So I'm wondering, as far as the complacency that you mentioned, which we undoubtedly have, if we're not turning the ship a little bit here. And I mean, inevitably we have to.
Of course we are, and it's an illusion. It's an illusion of, I mean, heck, it's like the illusion of, I grew up in the 80s. So, there was the big scary man driving around that was going to be like, hey, kid, do you want some candy?
Do you want some candy? Hey, little
right?
girl.
You get in the candy,
I remember
right?
that.
But once you get in the van, it's going to get real. It's the same thing.
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay, Cruiser Graham, which I will say publicly, like he's rumor on the street, that congressman likes to cruise in Palm Beach. He was on, Fox News talking about, I don't support the Restrict Act. It's just a carrot. It's the man giving the candy, trying to get you in the van. So it's a way to quell emotions. It's a way to pacify people. So yes and no. We can't expect the system that is oppressing people to turn around and lift people up. It won't happen. And it's very difficult to share how I really feel about things in such a public space because I recognize my responsibility and the size of my platform. I'm not here to encourage people to do anything other than educate themselves. How I personally feel about things, that's stuff that I can share behind closed doors with people because I just can't expect the abuser to turn around all of a sudden and be the it won't happen. Period.
This is where I think Digital Sister has some connectivity issues, but there you are. You're back. Good. Stay here because I have the loaded question for you, my friend. As far as organizing and communal feel and coming together and opposing just a range of negative experiences, systemic experiences, the African American and Black community just has fundamentally more experience than we will ever have. What can we learn? What can we adopt? How can we come together? And I know this is a vast question, but I think it's one perhaps that provides a starting point. And you look fantastic, but you look very frozen on the screen right now.
Yep.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can see a
very
picture of you. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. So just right quick, one trick that you can do that might help is turn your video off and then turn it back on. Sometimes that gets it unfrozen, but yeah.
Although I love the look in the avatar photo there. As an old school goth girl.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I'm not moving, but I know I'm
there you are.
kind of here. Yeah, okay.
Hi,
everybody, and thank you for having me. And I had to change the Wi-Fi. I think I'm going to be okay, but we'll see. Because I kept dropping off, and I was like, no, something's going on. So I switched it, so just in case if I disappear, I'll just switch again.
Sure.
So I think that...
No.
Bollocks.
Good start. Didn't last long.
That was impeccable. That was impeccably funny timing.
Yeah.
Yes, bad as it is.
The wonderful era of technology that brings us together and then...
Gremlins are abound today.
Yeah, I mean, I just really want to know what is it going to take for us to bridge the gap? Because I obviously have no experience in this, which is where Digital Sister really comes in. Have any laws changed? Just say duck, just ask that, I believe. The law that is potentially in the process of being changed is Florida Statute 99.012, which presently says that an elected official cannot run for another position without resigning the present position. And that would, of course, disable DeSantis to run for president unless he resigns as a governor, and there's a 10-day time frame in which he needs to essentially resign. And the resignation, that is the more interesting thing, I would say, behind this, is it sticks, basically. It's not like you get to change your mind. It's like, I'm going to stick around. No, you resign, you're done. So the bill that was filed or announced today, 7050, is designed to potentially change that. And keep him as a governor while he's eligible to then run for president. So that's, in a nutshell, the legislation that is was topic of my recording today. And I think now more than ever, with Trump getting very busy very quickly, we got to figure out how we come together, because Trump, well, as much stage presence as he does have, which we got to give him that, is an epic moron.
Yeah.
DeSantis is definitely not. Straight out of Salem is here. Come on up.
Oh my God.
Keep
I
it
love
together.
Salem so much.
Leave the shirt on, my friend. Leave it on.
But like, I low-key have like a crush on Salem. She's amazing. Yeah.
Well, that low-key just went on full-on blast.
Never.
So there is that.
I don't know how to do this, yo.
Hey
Yeah,
y'all.
up,
Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay, can you hear me talking?
Hey y'all.
Yes.
Yep.
I never do lives, and I don't know how. I feel like an old lady who doesn't know. And thanks
just say duck. You're correct. You're correct. You're correct.
Okay.
This is where the hard K clan is at, y'all. We need to lift up the residents of Belglade. That's what we need to do. I'm so sick of replying and responding to the rhetoric, because what they're doing is, I hope y'all can hear me, my connection's okay. What he's doing is creating division between people, which just rouses. Because at the end of the day, 20 years from now, people won't really remember all of these things that he does on a daily basis, but they'll remember his name. That's what this tactic is. There's a town in Belglade, okay? It's surrounded by sugarcane. It's in Okeechobee. There's other towns there, but I'm focusing on Belglade because I'm working with residents out there specifically. If y'all go on Google Maps, I want you to go on Google Maps and do a little virtual tour. These residents are living in homes and structures that are over 100 years old. They have had zero infrastructure updates. By the way, property records in the state of Florida are all open. That's why you always hear about Florida man. It's a bunch of BS. Y'all have the same nutsos in your state. Trust me. It's the way that our laws are here. Every news station, I used to work in TV, every news station has, like, I don't know what they're called anymore, CB radios or whatever. You can hear all of the emergency calls. You can see all the arrests. It's public record. Anyway, the root, and if you know what I mean by root, okay, the way think about who built our country. It was built off of the backs of enslaved people. The root of a lot of things that are happening in our country are in cities like Belglade. And as a community, I would love nothing more than to lift up these residents. And I cannot do it alone. I've been warned by a lot of my friends that are high-profile Black leaders. Stay away. It's dangerous. I could end up in the Everglades. That's what we got to respond to. None of this DeSantis nonsense, because once you find weaknesses in what they're doing, and it's just, I just wish y'all could see what these people are living in. It's bad. And they're surrounded by billionaires.
The DeSantis piece, DeSantis in and of himself is essentially a conduit, if you will. It's that uniting factor that we can potentially focus on and say, okay, this is what brings us together. But now Digital Sister is back. Hopefully she's getting to stay this time.
I'm going to not turn on my video to see if I save myself with staying.
That's okay. Do you?
Because it wasn't working the last time. I was cute though, but like we're done.
That's true.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. Do you remember the loaded question that I threw at you?
Yes, I did. It was definitely a loaded question, but I'm actually going to also follow up to the Florida conversation as well. So here's my thing. I always struggle with people saying, like, we need to do something, but the problem is that people have been doing something. They just not have been listened to. They have not been heard and basically ignored, and many times publicly degraded and discredited when they were speaking up. And I mean that across the board, even including on these platforms where they keep talking about conservative bias, but all the people who were trying to shift the narratives were the ones that were actually being shunned and targeted. So there is a difference there. So if you are not listening to the people who have been the most marginalized, shunned, and targeted and are still speaking, because the whole point was to keep them from talking at all. And the fact that any of them are still speaking and still trying to do this fight, you have to understand how much they have moved and gone through, how much they have sacrificed, how many times their children have been threatened, their lives have been threatened for them to continue to be moving, and people are still saying to us, well, how do we begin? You know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit of thing there that, like, we need to be very honest about where that actually comes from and why we're having problems here in between. There is the group that is constantly trying to do this work, getting people to hear them. And there's a group that's going, oh my God, I just discovered something really, really bad is happening. And the gap we need to bridge is between those two. Because the challenge that we have is the ones that kind of want to get into it, but feel like they can't do anything without doing it perfectly. That's a problem for us. Because that's not how any of this works. Because nobody's doing it perfectly. But if the only way you can get into it, doing it perfectly, and then getting your hand slapped a couple of times and you gonna walk away, you know why you can walk away? Because this don't affect you.
Right.
You will not be harmed. At the end of the day, you can walk away and your whole family can walk away scot-free and nothing will happen to you. But those families over there, those people over there that have been fighting to save their lives and the lives of their whole community all this time. And you just discovered them. And that's the struggle that we're having in this particular moment. Because I know I personally have been setting off the alarm bells many instances, trying to warn people about the CRT school board stuff, trying to let people see what the political narratives were changing to and where we were becoming and what we're going into. What DeSantis is doing is that he is now, I mean this sincerely, I talk about this a lot. DeSantis, I'm sorry, I'm just going to do my thing here, so please forgive me in any way that anyone gets offended. DeSantis is publicly marketing off of the harm and targeting of Black and brown people. The woke, anti-woke that was gone unchecked, that was all about, free speech and we just have a difference of opinion. He has now institutionalized that into laws. And if you don't understand when something like that now gets institutionalized into laws and they're putting my identity, your identity, and immutable characteristics that are protected by law up against political ideology, I think you missed the boat a long time ago because we kept telling you what was happening. Your idea about my existence is not immutable. It's a disagreement. It's a discussion. But here's the other most important thing. My existence is actually not debatable at all. So the fact that you think you can have an idea about me, that you can have an idea about my existence, and you have the right to have more say about how I live and exist, my lived experience, we have already failed. And that's what is happening. You are codifying your opinion about me into law versus my lived experience. And that's what we're seeing with not only Florida, but a couple of other states. Now, I'm going to pause here because I know that there are other people who have heard me speak to that and have actually tried to talk to why we're having such a hard time. It's because we've lived in a society that has spent an enormous amount of energy telling Black and brown people what's really happening to them, or people from marginal groups. What's really happening to them is more like a theory and a practice, and we can debate over it. And they're screaming like, my life is on the line. Your opinion about my life is on the line actually doesn't work for us.
What does?
What does is listening to us and understanding why our lives are on the line and what needs to change for that. What I'm seeing, unfortunately, is laws that are closer to Jim Crow laws being reenacted.
Yeah.
Right? Let's just be honest. The basis of the Jim Crow laws being reenacted and now used as legal justification to basically say our lived experience is pointless.
Right.
And that's where it gets worse. We're no longer in the free speech argument. This is not about your version of woke, my version and definition of woke. You have written woke into a law. That's classified as a black code. You can call it a woke code if you want to. But as far as I'm concerned, from the history of this country, we are now in the anti-civil rights era. Yes. And that means for everybody who's marginalized. But we were the ones fighting for it.
So, Shireen, I think as far as this box is concerned, you are definitely preaching to the choir, which is why I was looking forward to having you back. And I just want to pose the question with the idea that, of course, we won't ever truly understand the lived experience that you just spoke of. But when we look at this as the status quo, and we now add demographics to it that thus far were reasonably unharmed or not quite as overtly targeted, what needs to happen going forward? Because from my perspective, as the odd man out with the appropriate accent, if we don't find a way to come together and take action, coming back to Ash on that, we're going to lose that. So what needs to happen? Because if we don't come to a common ground, to a consensus, we're just going to get, basically thrown off the cliff.
So there's a couple of things that I have a couple of really quick ones that actually has a lot to do with DeSantis. And I think that there's some things to think about. The outrage is not happening in the way that I think it has or should have in certain ways. But one of the things I was saying to someone, and I know that I'm the one that comes up with all these different kind of terms, but as far as I'm concerned at this point, DeSantis has turned Florida into a sundown state.
Amen. Amen.
Yep. It's a sundown state.
100%.
And we have to be really clear about what that means.
Yep.
And didn't they issue a travel advisory for Florida? If you're a marginalized community, they issued a travel advisory saying, don't come here.
Mm-hmm. When the NAACP is trying to say to black people, don't go to Florida, that's a sundown state, right? That there is that advisory is just one example of, hey, big alarm bell going on here. Now, here's the thing. I'm clear that some of the decisions, like what Disney is trying to do, is trying to push back from a business perspective on that. Like what they just did with Lilibeth, right? Perpetuity for the little baby before anything else can happen. That's another action. That is actually something being done. But more needs to happen. It needs to be a bigger push to understand that. Let's then have that broader conversation. If we're saying that black people cannot come to Florida, then we need to be saying a whole bunch of other things around that, right? We need to elevate that and make a statement about why that's the case.
Yes. That's why I think helping residents of Belle Glade.
Yes.
Helping these marginalized communities that have been screaming out for years. And if you ever go through Belle Glade, it's in the middle of the state, right? So I've lived on both coasts, and I've never had a reason to stop except to go to the gas station, to go to the bathroom, or get a snack. And there's a guy on here. His name is King Corn Truck. Go check out his videos. He talks to these residents. Y'all, they're like 80, 90 years old. They live in these houses and these apartments that were built in 1930. They have not had one update, not one. They are surrounded by sugar cane. I live in Palm Beach County. This is where the world's sugar cane is produced. Go read Their Eyes Are Watching God. Y'all, they've been saying this forever and nobody listens. And that's why I keep saying, I'm tired of responding to these fools. That they like it, right? They like that. So I say forget it. We have an amazing platform here on TikTok. So many of us have these great communities. Let's come together. Y'all remember that show, Move That Bus? I mean, the show was stupid, but everyone was so excited about,
It was the
how cool would it be? We had these bomb-ass TikTok meetups, and we went out to Belle Glade and and we lifted up the residents there. Screw this legislation, this policy, because I tried the other thing, and then I'll shut up. I tried lifting up a lot of the Congress people that are in our House and Senate right now in Florida. It's great to give visibility to them, and every single thing they introduce gets voted down. And then the apathy kicks in.
What happened?
Which makes sense. I mean, if you don't see some form of success at some point, then you're just going to be apathetic to the process.
And if you're a white person, or you're not like, or you're a white man, it's like, well, okay, well, I tried.
Yeah.
So what would happen with maybe teaming up with someone like Mercury Stardust and a few other, handy dandy people on this app, and creating a fundraiser to send? Because I mean, 1, 2, 3, at least I know for sure. I'm sure she's handy with a hammer and nail. What would happen if we went down and helped to rectify some of the inequality physically?
Well, yes,
create a fundraiser to bring us all down there and just take a weekend and impact what we can as fast and as hard as we can. Like, what's stopping us?
It's important for people to understand. Again, we call our family. I don't want to like stoke the fire, but this is where a lot of counties here called Lee County. All right. This is just an extension. I'm from Tennessee. I'm a hillbilly from Tennessee. I grew up in Florida. All right. This is where Klan members live. This is where they originate. Y'all realize they had those work camps. Okay. These officers in Belglade. Y'all got to understand, yes, people of color and marginalized groups have been speaking about this for years. And even me as a white lady, when I speak about these things, I'm putting a target on my back. Okay. I get that.
Oh, yeah, we do.
These sheriffs would sit up on these horses, okay? And they're all black guys, right? They'd sit around, have them peel potatoes, do this work, and have them shackled. This is just 5 years ago. Y'all do not understand. It's dangerous AF. It's the swamps. Look up what square groupers are. We're talking, y'all know what square grouper is. There's just a lot of stuff that happens here, and so it's important that people be prepared and know. That's why we need a massive amount of people to come at once. We are stronger together in large numbers.
We need to organize mutual aid, and we need to focus those projects of mutual aid. And
yeah, but we also I think that was jumped over, right? Because lynchings are back, y'all. Like that's
my neighboring state in Idaho.
So, like, asking certain people to be physically somewhere can be the end of their life. Like, lynchings are back. Like, I had one of my friends who works for Republican candidates. We had a hard conversation. I was like, what are you doing at this point? And he was actually willing to say, like, yeah, lynchings are back, I see. And I was like, so what does that mean? Because this country no longer counts lynchings, y'all. After 1968 and MLK died, they decided to no longer collect that particular data point. That is not a data point that will ever be collected again on purpose. So every time you hear 4,000 lynchings, please be clear, they have stopped counting since 1968. And we still didn't have all the numbers before that, right? Because a lot of that was hidden. We have to be very careful about asking people to show up in spaces that we know are, like I said, sundown state. Like that sundown. If you don't know what the definition of sundown means, that means black and brown people cannot be present after dark because there's no telling what would happen to them.
Yep.
Can someone who knows more,
the whole entire state. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask if somebody who knows more about what's happened with our federal government versus states' rights. Can someone talk about why there's no fucking checks and balances? Like, how are things getting this outrageous and the actual president can't stop them? I think that's, to be honest with you, I think that's probably for a lot of just regular people who don't know a lot about the government. The horror of it is that these things are happening, but there is nothing being done to stop it in a higher place in our country. It's almost like it's not even being acknowledged.
Because it's not, these people are just think pieces, and I say this in all earnest. Like, okay, I've done a lot of stuff with different municipalities. We'll keep it local just for a second to give you perspective. It's not the commissioner that's like, oh, go ahead, your project's good. It's the lady at the clerk's office that holds up your paperwork. It's the engineers. It's when you got to write an MOT plan to get a road closed off. It's the people that are, well, did you do this? If y'all have ever been to college or had to go to the DMV and you got to wait in this line to do this paperwork. Those are the people that are doing this stuff and that are not pushing the things through or revealing wrong information. And I've actually worked with Ashley Biden, FYI. Okay. So, like, people don't understand their biases. And we have got to lift up people of color and marginalized groups, period. When we lift up people that are oppressed, everyone benefits. Everyone benefits. So that's why this government and on the federal level is like this, because go look at Buddy Carter from Georgia. Go look at his cabinet or his staffers. A bunch of white trust fund kids, rosy cheeks. They all look like they could be part of the Murdaugh family. It is systemic, hardcore.
So I can actually answer this.
Look at the distribution of how legislators are essentially demographically distributed. It's predominantly white. Yeah. Just really quick, I know that there are a couple of requests to come onto the panel, Dutch and Snick. Unfortunately, TikTok only allows me 6 squares. I'm not privileged to have 9. Otherwise, you guys would already be up here. So we may rotate through here before too long and get some additional voices onto the board. But until then, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do because, well, TikTok doesn't let me. Sorry, Sharina, I think I just interrupted you.
Yeah, I would love to answer the federal versus state question. This is probably the most civil education question that I hear the most that the average person doesn't understand. As someone who has been part of politics basically all my life as on the edges of it, not running for office or anything like that, but I will tell you that I do have family members that have. However, I come from a lineage of I probably didn't say this before, but I'll say it now. I come from the lineage of the insurrection that was connected to 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina. I know what an insurrection is and what happens and how a whole state can kind of change based on one insurrection. So when January 6th happened, I was a little bit flabbergasted to experience it in my timeline, right? But the reason why I'm having this conversation is because I want to connect a couple of really, really quick dots to what we're right now experiencing, right? There's now a what we now know is an indictment of a former president who is being held accountable by a state. This would be right. Like all of that is questionable. Don't throw this off. Like, listen to what I'm saying. The reason they can do that is because it is not a federal jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Everything that he was getting away with that was federal jurisdiction, where Congress is trying to hold him accountable with impeachments, where the January 6th commission happened, all those roadblocks are federal roadblocks that stopped that conviction. States are not controlled by any of that. So when Jim Jordan was sending a letter to Bragg saying, come and testify to a hearing before you do this, they don't have to. Legally, that's what states' rights means. But imagine if he had to. Imagine if he could not go forward with an indictment, if he had to answer to the federal government. Do you understand now? Like, just this one thing, but it's way bigger than that, because the same problem we have about elections, the same problem we have about voting, the same problem we have about gerrymandering, the same problem we have about why people can't go vote and sit in 8-hour lines when other states it's like 15 minutes. That's states' rights. The minute you don't understand the distinction between that becomes the reason why we can't win, because the average person doesn't understand that. That's why when I said Florida is a sundown state, you have to understand that whole state is being exclusionary, and the federal government cannot come in. When January 6th happened, we have 5 different policings here. We have the park police, we have the Capitol Police, we have the DC Police, we have the National Guard, and we have one more, which I can't remember. The fact that people think that all of them were operating in the same moment at the same time, you are mistaken. DC police cannot touch federal land. They have to be invited in. So imagine the guy who's in charge making sure DC police can't show up. Get it? He has the power to actually do that. So when the Capitol Police are deciding not to show up, right? You have to understand, if they decide not to show up, they can also turn around and say, DC, don't come. You know what else can happen? They can also say the National Guard don't come. The National Guard cannot show up without a federal request in any state.
I thought they were at the behest of the governor.
No,
so
I thought
it depends. So DC is a weird situation because it's not like a state, right? So DC, so let's just say it was a random state. The way it works is the governor can activate the state's National Guard, because each state has its own like National Guard or whatever. And then if for whatever reason the National Guard needs to be activated, but the governor is refusing to activate it, the president can do what's referred to as nationalizing or federalizing the National Guard in that state and then activate it. So in the case of DC, there is no governor. In the case of DC, it goes directly to the president. So the National Guard in DC is controlled exclusively by the president. And so at the time, that was partially why it was such a big deal when January 6th happened, because Trump refused to activate the National Guard.
Yep.
And because of that.
And Hogan was on the edges trying to bring the state guard from from Maryland, and Virginia was waiting to be called in. Right. So I don't think people understand that distinction. And so the governor can also say, I'm not bringing the guard in at all. And the president can say, I can take over that. Those are the distinctions between states' rights. And DC is not a state. So just in case you missed that part. But that means we have no control when something actually goes crazy here. And that person knew. So when someone says states' rights to me, I don't think you understand what you're asking. Because what you're telling me as someone in DC, I have no rights.
Yeah.
You have rights that I don't have. And that's a whole different conversation. But in many of these local state legislatures, you have to understand that those policies cannot be overturned unless there's some seen violation, and then the federal government has to come in. Now that has a historical framework. I won't go into the details of it because that will take me down a whole history lesson plan. But the reason that each of your states are having such a hard time is this. Your state legislature, your governor, can deny the federal funds coming in. You know what else they can do? They can take those federal funds and do something else with them. So the COVID funds coming into a state and they decide they want to build a prison instead.
Yeah. We saw that in several southern states over the pandemic. They misappropriated those funds. Well, I'm using that term very broadly, not in a legalese sense, but they misappropriated those funds. For example, DeSantis sending migrant refugees legally here to various leftist places to own the libs.
Another example of fund, well, it's not really fund failure. It's more, there are a litany of red states, and this has been going on longer than COVID, who have all refused to expand Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act. So basically the way that the ACA works is that they're able to, or that it allows for a Medicaid expansion for the state, and the federal government will cover 90% of that expansion, meaning that the state only needs to raise 10% to cover those funds for that entire Medicaid expansion. But so many red states have refused to do Medicaid expansion for ideological reasons. It's a lot of bullshit.
Okay, I can actually speak on that specifically and personally. Anecdotal purely, but for example, in Oklahoma, when I still lived there, me and a friend of mine, who the only difference was I was a business owner. I didn't make a whole hell of a lot, but I was a business owner. In Oklahoma, when the ACA passed, Mary Fallon, a lot of governors had an option to be a little more generous, a little more humanistic with regards to how Obamacare could be incorporated in their states. And because I had an IEN, I could only qualify for the catastrophic insurance. And that was $6,000 a year, or sorry, $600 a month. My deductible was $6,000 a year, and I had to pay everything until I hit that deductible. And it's one of the reasons why I moved up here to Washington State, because fucking libs, man, they want to help people get what they need.
Crazy,
oh
right?
My gosh, crazy how radical. And I don't have that problem here, and I have 3 IENs, and I still could get an affordable medical option for my chronic illness. And Mary Fallon, states like Oklahoma, they opted out of that, and it was catastrophic for anybody who needed it. And it's because of those Republican governors opting out of the more generous aspects of Obamacare.
Yeah.
Well, this is where I honestly cannot educatedly participate, because where I'm from, we have access to health insurance for everyone without, any questions asked. And we don't have United Health with 18
must be nice.
Profit. Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
My gosh.
So I know that a lot of European nations do, like, they all do it differently, slightly differently. So how do they do it where you're from?
You have a problem, you go to the doctor. End of story. Done.
Well, so like, is it just like, does it come out of your paycheck? Like, is it?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's taxed from your paycheck. There's an employer contributed portion. And at the end of the day, that takes care of all of it. And I think everybody understands, for one, the unwritten social contract behind it, but for another, that everything just essentially is time delayed, right? I mean, from a statistical perspective, you're just going to have fewer issues while you're young, but once you're older, you're going to just kick the bucket a little bit closer. And at that point, you just have more medical needs. And with that being said, it just transfers. And with that type of arrangement, everybody is perfectly fine with having an X% deducted, and that's just the end of it.
Yeah, that was my experience in England. So when I was there, did the NHS as an immigrant. Whenever I immigrated in there, I had to pay like a catch-up fee, is how I describe it. Basically, it's like the cost of immigrating, like the paperwork, but also to get access to the NHS, I had to pay like an upfront fee, which makes sense because people who have lived there their whole life have been paying into the NHS their whole life, where I have not. So, all right, it makes sense. I think that I can't remember how much that was, but it was like $1,500, maybe $2,000, something like that, which sounds like a lot of money, but honestly, like, not really. And then once I was there, I didn't have a job for about like a month or two while I was there. I was hunting for work, and I could still go to the doctor, no problem. The first time I went to the doctor, it was the weirdest experience because I went to the front desk lady, and I was just kind of standing there awkwardly, and she said, "Do you need something?" And I was like, "Do I have to pay?" She said, No, you're good." So there was that. And then when I got a job, there was none of that. Like, you have to become an expert in like health insurance that you go through when you get a job, where it's like, I don't know what a FSA is versus an HSA, and I need to figure that out. I need to know what is co-insurance versus copay versus premium, like, what are all of these terms?
And they don't fucking tell you here. They don't tell you.
And basically all of those,
they never take that time.
Exactly. All of those terms are different ways that they're taking money out of your pocket for no good reason. And then once you get to the doctor, you still have to pay. Like, you're paying every month, and you're still having to pay at the doctor, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, no, I didn't have to do that. Like, when I got my job, it was literally, hey, these are your benefits. We don't talk about health insurance because you don't have to. and I think it was like, I don't know, 10% out of my paycheck each month, which that's nothing. I think I pay 10% now. Like, it's around that. So
can I shift the conversation really quick? Not to be, I just, like, I've had health insurance twice in my life. I'm 44. Like, I don't even get, like, that's just way too privileged for me to talk about right now. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful at all, but like, so something I discovered and understood. Have y'all ever heard of crisis mapping?
Yes.
Okay, so I started doing research about, again, I live in Palm Beach. It's very military, Pratt Whitney. Like, I just cannot tell you how I'm surrounded. I've always mentioned this before. Larry Fink lives right by me. Larry Ellison, okay? I know what I'm talking about. Internet, wires, cables in the ground, the ocean, science, math, whatever. It's cymatics, okay? This is how you're able to read things from far away. You're measuring sound from a distance. Again, math problems. There is a person, his name is Patrick Meyer, okay? He consulted with Facebook, and as I was researching this stuff, it basically comes off of string theory. My point is that we could literally take all of the text from every single congressperson at the state and federal level, run it through a database around crisis mapping, utilizing the AI. I'm noticing this pattern of AI being this like hot topic with these upcoming conferences. And we ask AI or this software to analyze the patterns in what kind of bills they're producing. To give you an example, Diana Harshbarger, did you all know that her husband went to prison for 4 years because he's a pharmacist and he was cutting a drug that he got from China that was cheaper? Okay, he was fined over $1 million, and yet she's up in that Congress, and she's from where I grew up, where I was born. She's up there like, I can't believe you got that stuff from China. So I find it very interesting. There's this pattern, we talk about healthcare or whatever. Pharmacists, there's lots of doctors and pharmacists that are in our Congress. There is a pattern here, and this is what I mean about I'm getting tired of talking about responding to the abuse and oppression. I want to find ways that we can creatively disrupt it. Fire ants. If you know how to kill a fire ant hole, right? You don't spray chemicals. Please stop spraying chemicals, y'all. Please. What you got to do is you pick up a fire ant nest, because the colonies, even though they might be close together, they are not part of the same colony. You scoop up one colony and you put it on top of the other colony. That's how you get rid of fire ants. They duke it out themselves.
That's what has been happening amongst the classes in the social caste system for decades.
They're what
just
I
putting one fire ant.
To do.
Right, exactly, right. And that's that horizontal hostility where we're taking out our oppression on each other as opposed to like focusing up at the top, or, my personal opinion, they're down at the bottom. But, and then I'll pop off because I know other people want to get in here, but I think we should be focusing on crisis mapping or looking at the theory of power law dynamics, because this is how the military, this is how governments track populations and can predict, and it's called Digital Humanitarians is his updated website, but they literally use crowd computing, social media, large data sets to predict behavior in people. I say flip the script, do what they're doing, take every single word any of those people have ever said on any floor of any house, put it through AI, and compare it with existing laws and find the freaking gaps and prosecute their asses.
Oh, I love this.
We're too busy being distracted. We got, oh, look, a squirrel constantly, and it's intentional or whatever.
That is by design.
Right. So let's just do how they're doing it, but we just have to have some kind of core beliefs.
On that note, because that was the original trajectory for today, is how do we actually go forward? I think, and this is not to dismiss anyone's adverse experiences by any stretch of the imagination. The only problem is that if we sit in that reflective position for all too long, they are still going to advance everything that they have on their agenda. And the longer we sit in our position of generational trauma, if you will, in a variety of ways, the more they are going to get a head start. And they're already far ahead. So my question, the premise for tonight was originally like, what can we do right now to come together and just move the peg a little bit more into our direction? And Ash, you just said something earlier regarding I guess, coming together, registering, and so forth. I know that you're the expert sort of in the nonprofit space, particularly the C4s that can accept donations and make donations.
Yes.
If anybody here in the audience is interested to actually dip their toe into the water or become somewhat of, not necessarily an expert, but at least knowledgeable, what do they need to know?
If you, and I misspoke, I don't know why no one called me out of my videos. I kept saying 501c4 for like a month, which is a social welfare organization. It's actually a 501c6, which is a mutually beneficial organization. So a chamber of commerce, a realtor association, okay, a political action committee, those are all 501c6s. If you're interested in doing something like that, there's a couple things you need to do. A nonprofit is literally a business, okay? You have to do the same exact paperwork. It's just a little bit different reporting requirement on the end for the feds. That's it. So it's the same headache. You need to create a board, right? Put your articles of incorporation in the state, file with the state, file your 501c6 application. Here's a little nugget for y'all because I'm doing this for free, right? It's a 1023EZ form. EZ, whatever Z is. I think this is Z. It's on pay.gov, and that's how you file a 501c3 or nonprofit, I should say. Everybody does the long form. That could take 6 months to a year. They do that on purpose. It's 1023EZ form. You file that paperwork, then you go ahead and register yourself as a lobbyist in your state, and then you register yourself as a lobbyist within DC. I think DC's $250. It's literally an application. Remember, all of this stuff is public information, so you always want to use a PO box or a virtual mail. USPS or UPS store has PO boxes that look like street addresses. When you have a nonprofit, whatever 501, whatever it is, it's all open to public inquiry. So you want to protect yourself, put a wall between you and the public so you're protected. And then you can hit the ground running. Obviously, you need to have a set of principles. And if you're on a board of a political action committee or you're a part of that, remember that you are a fiduciary agent of that organization, meaning you are equally responsible for the health and wellness of that organization. And the IRS could prosecute you equally. So nobody has a nonprofit or owns a nonprofit. That's a farce. And that's about it. It's very simple. It's very easy to do. And I've made a couple of videos. There are several lobbying, like that Targeted Victory we talked about. Facebook hired that lobbying group. They're the ones that are attending and going to these events that are coming up. There's one in May and there's one in September. And I told people in my video, I'm like, just put on a suit, pretend, be like, hey, Karen, how are the kids? I'm so excited, and then go home and implement it. Don't let these people, don't show your cards. So that's what I would do. And if you need help with that, you can always hit me up. And I'm trying to find a way to safely put a town hall together because for me, I used to do human trafficking rescue, if y'all don't know that. I used to train FBI, ICE, DOJ, HHS. I had to get out of it after 3 years because I was starting to become a misandrist. And again, no offense to the white men that are here, but it's mostly white cis-het men in between like 40, 50, 60, 70 years old that are the ones that are the Johns. They're the ones that are doing this to our children. Yep. Period, point blank. I'm just being honest.
Our children are
well, the good thing is that Nemo and I are just substantially younger, so we don't fall into that demographic.
Exactly.
So, I don't know. It's just, we have a lot of potential. I'm ready to go. I just feel I don't trust people. I had somebody in one of my videos, and he was like talking about not doing nice things to people. And I'm like, I don't care what your ideology is. I don't do violence. That's not my thing. I don't condone it, whatever. But then I thought about, well, for all I know, that guy could be a Fed because they are historically known for disrupting and going in to social justice groups to cause a ruckus in order to dismantle the groups. That is what they do. That's why we can't form and build.
It's been proven unequivocally time and time again, especially since the murder of George Floyd and, protests all over the country, that we have had bad actors, but we find out that they're somehow otherwise related. And I remember seeing something about a podcast being started based off quantifiable sources and information.
Are you talking about the Black Lives Matter infiltration?
Mm-hmm. In Colorado.
Whose podcast is that?
ABC Boys, the Alphabet Boys.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
And then we just have to look at the Hoover administration and the FBI and all the bodies left in his fucking wake.
Yeah, well,
sorry, that gets me a little angry.
The good thing about what I'm doing is I'm related to 30 presidents. Okay? Henrietta Lacks is my 6th cousin. Emmett Till is my cousin. Chief John Ross of the Cherokee Nation is my 6th great-granduncle. I am an amalgamation of all of those things, and I'm over it. So I will use my privilege and what I look like and how people perceive me with the way that our society is structured to go into rooms that a lot of people cannot get into, and I will turn around and crack the door open so that other people can come right in. That's the intention of what I'm doing, and I'm saying it publicly here, but that's, if you go on my page, I'm very like, okay, let me show you how to get on the Federal Register. But that's my intention.
You're amazing. You're amazing, and the work you do in your videos is phenomenal and groundbreaking. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't mean to sound angry or anything. I'm ready to go. Okay. I'm ready to do something because every second I tune in, I plug into a screen, it's like, update. Here's another bad thing about Florida.
And I'm like, to get fired up. We all need to be fired up. We all need to be matching your energy, Bowman's energy, all this. We need to bring that passion back to politics and toward human rights.
Yeah, and I think inevitably out of that passion, out of the interest, out of the various registrations of C3s, 4, 5, 6, 18s, whatever there is, I think comes action. And the question really is, what type of action can we construct right now? How can we come together? And again, my default in this case, of course, is always to digital sister on this, because it is going to take all of us. And by all of us, I'm just simply, I guess, I'm combining all the demographics, because no demographic alone can actually move that behemoth in the direction in which we need.
They want to keep us separate because together we have power.
Well, but exactly, and therein lies now the conversation, is like what needs to happen as far as action items that we can all actually agree upon, and how do we come to that agreement that is thus far, I think, accentuated by being fractured.
Well, can I ask you a question, Professor? Just without the social stuff, right? Like, you see a problem at hand. Based on your position in society, right, from your perspective, how would you tackle it?
I mean,
because that's where I think you can help us.
Yes and no. My mission has strangely morphed into one of, I suppose, activism, not in the sense of the stereotypical definition of activism in the US, but becoming active in the political process, meaning to become engaged, to have an interest, because at the end of the day, the vote that we cast is supposed to represent us. And as far as I have come to learn the disposition of the United States, of Americans, we cast our vote and we fall into this deep just hole of apathy, political apathy. First and foremost, get interested. And somebody commented in the comment section earlier, that I forgot what it was. Lost my train of thought here. Essentially, we need to just be more engaged, and engagement starts through knowledge. And that was the comment, that all they hear is bad stuff. And as a former broadcaster, many moons ago, it's what bleeds that leads. Yeah, look at headlines.
Yeah.
It's accentuated by negativity. That stuff draws us in. That's the stuff that we want to watch, that we want to actually read. And I see it on my videos. I did a couple, like 3, 4, 5 positive videos. And like, hey, positive news. Women's rights preserved in Michigan, or something was codified in Minnesota. And it's like, this is worthy of being put out. I mean, people need to know that. There's hope. And the viewing rates were just marginal. But I talk about DeSantis, and that sucker flies up the handle. So there is a general misinterpretation as to what we should focus on, where our pockets of hope are, and what we're doing with them. From my perspective, it's education, because education is the only way that we can get beyond generational trauma. Education is the only way that we actually learn to understand everything that digital sister is saying. Without her educating us, no shot. That's my position, and that's the only thing that, in my opinion, that we can do is that we have conversations like these, and then have an actionable item coming out of it. Ginge,
but maybe there are more things people can do.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have a idea down in the comments. Jen in Space says we build mutual aid that excludes no one except the GOP leaders. Bleed off their support. Yeah. We flip the script and create. We burn it. We burn it to the ground from the inside out, right, Jen? Is that what you're saying? Maximize that monetary support to the opposite end of what they're working toward, but covertly. Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
But together.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this, I think, at Nemos's live yesterday. Just briefly, I just jumped into this, or perhaps it was our last live. I don't remember. The point is simply that I would just say the liberal camp, the left-leaning camp, is unbelievably diverse. With that diversity comes basically refracture of light. It goes everywhere. We have so many interests. We have so many varied focal points that it's really difficult to get us under one hat and align under particular missions. Then you look at the other side, whether that's, I hate to even go there, but the 7 Mountain Mandate idea, right? Or Project Blitz. Or any type of legislation that is being proposed and passed, it's all laser focused. Mm-hmm. They're working on 5, 6, 10 line items, done. We are working on 1,000 line items.
Right.
And it's that fractured positioning that makes it difficult. Digital Sister, totally suppressed you, and I apologize for that. I just wanted to throw it over to you. What can we actually do from a combined perspective demographically? Because again, this is where the ignorant European comes in. I don't understand a single thing of what the African-American experience in the U.S. really is. And do we even have an opportunity to come together and walk together?
No, I think we do. And I'm sorry, y'all, because I know you can't see me because I've been dropping off and I didn't want to drop off during some of the most important parts of the conversation. I would be putting my hand up, but I can't. So I'm doing my best.
Just tag me. I'll tag me in the chat, and I'll make sure hey, hold on, I got you.
That's perfect. I'll do that next time. Yeah, I was like, how do I make sure that people can see I'm trying to speak? So there's a couple of things. Like I do think that like trying to have organizations in place is fine, but I also want to say that like there's probably organizations you should be either helping to fund already that are trying to do this work on the ground in those states, as well as there are organizers. You know, one of the things that I am blessed with knowing is that there's a lot of digital organizers out there working on political campaigns and part of this ecosystem that I actually helped to train early days just before Obama ran and he won his digital campaign and became president. We have the technology, we have the skills. We're just not combining them, in my opinion. And that's where we've fallen short. My opinion is, in my heart of hearts, about the ways in which the way that social media has taken on such a really uncomfortable mis and disinformation component is because the original way it was used was to give voice to the voiceless. Now we can't even hear the voiceless because they're overshadowed and falsely silenced by the loudness of those who are in the most harmful positions and elevating that. Like, those are the things I think we're missing. I think we're still having a hard time hearing what people are saying is going to work for them. And one of the things in terms of us moving forward is like actually listening, because there's a difference between saying, hey, I know how to fix this for you, let's go, versus like those people saying, here's what we need fixed. Here's where we want to be a part of the conversation. And you basically ignoring that and going, oh, I heard you, but let's go do it this way.
Right. Yeah, totally.
I listen.
Could you throw an example in?
That I've seen.
Oh my God.
I did listen though, right? So that's one of the worst of it all, right? It becomes this really, really challenging conversation because we have our internal fights about different things between our cultures and where we don't agree on certain aspects and the challenges we have in between. But ultimately, there's this really unfortunate moment of like, okay, but here are the people who have the resources and they're going to come save you. Most groups don't need to be saved.
Yes.
They need to be heard.
Yes.
Like if there's
heard,
an action,
represented and seen.
If there's an action, listen and do what they asked you to do. Don't make up your own narrative about what they're asking for you to do. Like, don't come up with your own solution for it. Go back and listen again if you think you got it wrong, right? Like, one of the challenges that we have in our society is that so many people that think that they can be the savior and they're going to be the hero. You can't be the hero without the community. Yes. I don't know why you think you can be the single hero out there saving everybody.
Whiteness and individualistic thinking. I'm just gonna bust us all out on that one.
It's not how it works.
No,
it doesn't work that way.
Here's an example.
I know y'all love to make it seem like MLK did it all by himself.
No.
He did not.
Neither did Rosa Parks. No. Here's an example. There in my neighborhood, the mom groups would always, little Johnny, his LL Bean backpack, he's going to get a new one next year. So is there any kid, like poor homeless black kid that I could donate it to? And they ended up banning me from the group. Okay, so just going to reveal the ending. I would say every year, do you realize these are children? They do not want your used crap. The audacity of you people every year they would do the same thing and they'd all organize all their used backpacks, even though and I would get so mad. And I'm like, you're not listening. The kids they want new stuff just like every other child. So I saw some comments of like, what's an example? That's the example of how people aren't listening to other people in marginalized groups.
Yeah, they think they're helping. Because they're like, you probably don't have the resources to buy a backpack, but use the one my child has used for a couple of years.
And then they're not grateful.
It's arrogance.
And then you're considered not grateful because you didn't take it or because you complained about it, right? And then it's the trope of, now you're angry. Why are you getting angry? Exactly. Why are you raising your voice?
Exactly.
And it is a pattern. That's why I asked you last time we talked, like, how do I not center myself? Me personally, No Justice, No Streets. I support Marsha Howard. I've been supporting her for years. I'll send her some money anytime I get a little extra, like Cash App or whatever. But it's not like I say it. I don't publicly say that. Or Bristol English Project. We text all the time. He'll be like, hey, what about this? I'll tell him. That is how I help people of marginalized communities. Just pick my brain. Ask me. I know I'm going to have a perspective that they might not or might be able to see something. Outside of that, I don't know how else I can use my skill set to help without centering myself.
I think someone was asking another example about like what does that look like. So for example, one of the big ones. I wish I can give a better example outside of this, but like one of the big ones has been Georgia, right? SB 202 has been the most horrific law written, and the most devastating law that has impacted voters in Georgia. There are multiple other laws that I want to get into, but SB 202 has basically said at this point there will be no drop boxes in Georgia.
Yeah.
0 when it finally got to the other end of it, right? The problem that we have with things like that, I'm just using that as a practical conversation. Why is that important? Because there are people who cannot, outside of work, go vote. There are people who cannot do wet signatures for mail-in ballots, right? There are people who cannot do certain things. And the question now is, since these laws are now in place, what can you do in Georgia to make it possible for those people to be able to vote? Really simple. The most targeted group in Georgia not only is the elderly, but it's everyone who doesn't have the resources just to be able to have the time in between to vote. They cut down the voting time. You know, people believe that you should only vote on one single day. That is just ridiculous. Like there are excuses being granted for the fact that people now can't be given water while they're standing in line for 8 hours.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Right? These are the things, like, if you want to help, like, go to the places who are being punished for voting in Black and brown politicians.
And I want to piggyback. Sister, because an interesting factoid I found out in this last election, because I pay attention to the places where I have friends who live. So Arkansas State, during this last election, the total populace is somewhere around 3 million. Only 900,000 people voted in that state. So if we need to put a white face on this for anybody down there in class, Arkansas had less than a third of their entire populace vote. Now, I pose the question, why do you think that would be? What kind of barriers were in place to keep 2 million people, 2/3 of the state's population, from voting? I think the final count for the governor was like 9,000 or 960 something thousand out of 3 million residents of the state of Arkansas. What do you think was the problem there?
I can only guess, but do you want to tell us? Because I think there was a combination of things going on there. It's Arkansas.
Yes, ma'am, there was.
You know,
yes, ma'am, there was.
Little Rock. Like, come on, y'all. Arkansas.
Little Rock, Cabot, Beebe, and that whole starting to become a metropolitan area there in the central part of the state around the state capital is one of the blackest areas of the state. And that had some of the highest turnout, if you also include the Fayetteville area, because college town. Those two areas were some of the highest turnout. And when you have areas like the Jonesboro, Paragould, Bono metropolitan area over there, about 45 minutes from Memphis, Tennessee, you've got West Memphis, Arkansas, and Marion, and that area, also a heavily black area. Like, we know. I mean, I've seen what our voter turnout here in Washington State is with automatic mail-in ballots. It is wonderful. It's not as good as I would like it to be, honestly. But when you remove the barriers to voting, you get people showing up and showing out like they should. They feel less disenfranchised. And I can only speak from the whiteness point of view here. But and a couple of intersections, but we all need to be advocating locally, organizing locally for barriers against voting to be removed for whatever reason, whatever class, social caste, or racial barrier there is. And white women need to stop voting against our best fucking interests.
So let me just say that as a follow-up, because you're right about that. I think most people are not paying attention to that at all. And then still we have another problem. It's like once we get state legislatures in there and they start changing the rules, we need to be paying attention to that too, just so that we're clear. But the reason why Stacey Abrams is so funny to me, does anyone here, raise your hand, can tell me, why did Stacey Abrams lose?
White women. I'm in Georgia. That's what it is.
That's what it was.
I concur.
It was white women. White women are the ones that didn't vote for her.
Yeah.
Why not? She's awesome.
The numbers bear it out.
I'm not exaggerating.
So basically, what you can do.
Gap.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the voting patterns in Georgia, so the easiest way to look at this is to just look at election day, because there was a runoff. So don't count that because that is different. But basically, on election day, Raphael Warnock, a Democratic senator who won, by the way, get him, Democratic senator on the ballot. All right. Stacey Abrams on the ballot, Democratic candidate for governor. So two Dems, right? If Democrats vote straight Democrat, then that means that Stacey Abrams would have won, because Raphael Warnock did get more votes than Herschel Walker in the general election. It wasn't 50% plus one. But Stacey Abrams would have won. But what happened was people voted for Raphael Warnock, a black man, and then they refused to vote for Stacey Abrams, a black woman. They were happy to vote for Brian Kemp, who just crap. He's crap. But they were happy. They were totally fine with voting for Brian Kemp over Stacey Abrams, despite voting for Raphael Warnock. Raphael Warnock got more votes than Stacey Abrams, which if you're just going straight Democrat tickets, that should not happen. And that's because people switched votes. They chose a different party in their ballot. And it was white women based on exit polls. That's what it was.
Interesting. Someone asked, how do you get out of a cult? And I mean, I get where you're going with that question. This is my answer. You all know what murmuration is? And I don't know what it is for fish, but like how fish go into school and all of a sudden they change direction at any moment. Same thing with birds.
Think birds.
Right?
Birds,
Same thing,
yeah.
right? This is my question to your question. What disrupts murmuration? That's how you break people out of a cult. I don't have the answer. Everything in life, if you guys have questions like that are deep and like, whoa, okay, I see the problem. Think about something in nature that is similar, and think about things that you have observed in nature and how it has rectified the issue, and apply it to the cause or the social thing that you're thinking about.
Yeah. There's not a... there has been so many different takes on how to get people out of cults. Not even just political ones, just cults in general. And it is, unfortunately, a laborious and long, involved process. It's not just a, hey, you're thinking wrong. Let's have an hour-long conversation. Okay, great, awesome. You're out of the cult. No, it's like a months, if not years, every single day.
It's a similar process to getting out of a domestically violent situation.
Exactly.
Number one, they have to want to change. Number two, they have to have the resources to be able to get out of it and the support systems. And also there has to be lengthy follow-up and therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy at all. And that's why, a lot of people have kind of written off certain red hats because there is a population of red hats who are simply gone. They are gone. There are moderates who voted for Donald Trump. It's a shrinking group, but they do exist, and those are obtainable. But the diehards, the deprogramming involved. I've tried to do it with like family members. It's so much. So that's kind of what it is. And then once you rope in politics, there's an even more like destructive nature to it, right? So like a cult by itself, let's just say a religious cult as an example, right? That is destructive for the person, right? Naturally, it's destructive for the person and that person's family.
It destroys their identity.
Exactly. But when it's a political cult, it compounds. So you have the destruction of that person's identity and their family and themselves. But you also have the destructive outputs from the political movement itself, because that typically is achieving certain policy goals. And unfortunately, Republicans are far better at that than Democrats because of that scatterbrain nature that we were talking about earlier. That's the other destructive piece, that sometimes those things reverberate not just for one presidential administration or two. They can reverberate for decades. There's so many things nowadays that you can trace to Reagan. 40 years. Cannon's Fodder, she's a creator on this app. Cannon's Fodder, if you do not follow her, go follow her. She talks about this extensively, how so many things trace back to Ronald Reagan, a man who was president for 8 years, 40 fucking years ago. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I cussed. But 40 years ago.
How dare you?
Yeah, so 40 years ago, and we're still feeling the impacts of Reagan. Imagine what's going on right now that we are going to experience the impacts of for decades to come. I mean, Roe is one great example, but there's so many others.
Okay, I'm jumping in. Honey Thunder asked an amazing question. I like it. Picasso, how was deprogramming achieved in post-war West Germany? That's probably something you have a little more insight on there, Prof.
Again, multi-layered. There is no one answer that truly fits all. I did respond in chat real quick. In part, it was just simply broad social change. It allowed for coming out of vilifying various groups, LGBTQ, of course, the Jewish community, and several other groups that are commonly not as prominent in the books of history. But coming out of it essentially meant doing two things. For one, rebuilding. When you walk through German towns, or many European towns, and you look at the architecture, you will find buildings that simply don't belong because they were rebuilt in the 50s, 60s, 70s. The focal point as to what needs to be done from a communal perspective to come together and have livable conditions change from destruction to rebuilding.
Right.
There is incredible power in this because it is the power of creation rather than the power of destruction. That's one of the million elements. Schooling, education certainly had an effect. Parents returning, going right back to you, Ginge. Parents had certainly an opportunity to recreate their lives outside of pressures, because whether participation was required or voluntary, you were participating. Because if you weren't participating, there were repercussions for that too. So multiple layers of conditioning and slowly but surely emerging from just significant trauma. And in fact, if I remember this right now, it was a Canadian psychologist who coined the term generational trauma in the 1950s or 60s, resulting from having observed the behavior patterns as well as the physical conditioning of the children of Holocaust survivors. And actually, Bessel van der Kolk runs with that concept as well, the body keeps the score, which has a lot to do with generational trauma. So there really is no one that's that easy answer for this. It's multi-layered, but it's predominantly, as we so often find, it's a essentially great combo of social changes. Change.
To I'm Antifa, I wanted to answer your question. They asked the question, why did white women vote against Stacey Abrams? And that is a very multi-layered, nuanced answer. But first and foremost, I'm just going to speak and call all of us white women out. Women, white women specifically, are the worst perpetrators and perpetuators of white supremacist culture, as well as the patriarchy. We are literally the foot soldiers, and as many black women on this app have told us, we are the ones who birth and raise our oppressors. That is the most simplistic answer I can give you to your question as to why Stacey Abrams has not been able to be elected. And we have to keep that in mind, and we have to unpack how we exist in white spaces and how safe we want to be. Because when we start bucking against that, we become feral women. And that is not received well either. So first, I invite you to examine your conviction. And then I invite you to unpack all the BS we as white women have been under the thumb of since our birth. It is carefully curated and it is uncomfortable. I invite you to unpack that. I invite you to journal it, and I invite you to listen to black women in various arenas of social media, but especially this app. And if you want any recommendations, I can give those to you.
Yes, we need to make ourselves uncomfortable, big time. I remember I was in 4th grade, and my best friend, his name was Brian. He was black, and it was the first time I was aware of that we were different skin colors. And anyway, I remember going to his house every day after school and watching BET, and their family was so amazing. I was like, what is this BET? And they were just such an amazing family. and his older sister was talking about her hair, and I was like, oh, well, my mom can French braid. My mom's good at it. She does my sister's hair all the time. And then my mom said to me, I'm not doing that. Her hair's nappy. And I'd never even heard that word in my life.
Oh, damn.
And my mother put that awareness into my head in fourth grade. And it's those microaggressions. So when you hear people of marginalized groups talking about microaggressions, it's on the flip side too for people like me and a white woman, where we hear these things, or I'll be in a group. So y'all know I don't have a car, right? I'm relying on people to take me places or get my son to school. And this one lady down the road, neighbor or whatever, I finally had enough. She's not my people, and she will say things that are not appropriate. But it's like we have to just sit and smile because we're trying to get our own needs met. But then that's because we don't have community.
Yep.
It's multi-layered.
I'm raising my hand for Digital Sister there. She popped in real quick, so I'd like to get the floor.
I can't. I'm so afraid to keep my camera up.
It's okay. Thank you. I caught it. I caught it, babe. I got you.
So I'm going to say some things that are purposely uncomfortable, right? And I need to say them because people are like, well, why wouldn't they vote for Stacey? Stacey seems amazing, right? What was said by Nemo is really important because what he said is actually very connected, because they were willing to vote for men. They were not willing to vote for women as leaders. And I need that to be heard in the proper way it needs to be heard. Because even part of the reason that HRC didn't win, and we can have arguments about what happened during that time period, I can go down the details of it. But one of the things she will say is that Black women voted for me. White women did not. And if you're following the model of who you should be voting for, if it's Black women, the ones that are saving our nation, then those are the ones you should have been following in the first place. So even when she made that statement, she made that statement clearly saying, I know which women didn't vote for me. But here's the most important part of what I'm going to say. And I need this to be heard. White women are still fighting for their own opportunities for leadership. And I'm not going to take that away because I think that that's real. But the problem is you want leadership while also being able to be oppressive in the same moment.
We can't have our cake and eat it too as well.
You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot take leadership and then step on Black women's necks. No, what you're asking for is to be in the same position as white men and thinking you have the right, and then at that point, we'll all catch up. No, we'll realize you're the oppressor too. That means that in order for you to move forward, you have to be able to feel comfortable enough that a Black woman, a Latin woman, a Native woman, you will take their lead as well. If you cannot take our lead as well, then none of this matters. What you're asking for is to be in the same position as men. And that in itself is the core problem of what we're having this conversation about. And the last thing I'll say, I definitely want to let you go next. The last thing I say about this, because we have a very, 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 very uncomfortable history in this country. Mm-hmm. But Black women were always forced to be in the households with white women, taking care of their children. Y'all didn't cook. Y'all didn't take care of your kids. You put laws in place to force Black women to take care of your household. You're mad at that in different ways. But be clear, we do remember. From slavery to this moment, you can't have the 1950s without also basically asking for us to go back to taking care of your household with you, not independent of you. And if you can't hear the independence part, we're telling you no. Again, what iteration of us that has to keep telling you no? So every time you see a woman who's leading that happens to be Black and you're upset about their ability to lead, dig deep, because there's something else going on there that has to do with our systemic framework in America specifically. I'm speaking to that. Thanks.
Digital Sister, I wanna I want to back you up. To, as a white woman, to any other white women or femmes in this chat, when you look for women in pioneership, when you look for women on the front lines of excellence and change, you will always, always find a woman of color. So if you need motivation to defer to Black women or women of color as leaders in revolution, look to women of color automatically. Look for it, because they are the ones who enact change. It was not Susan B. Anthony. It was a myriad of women of color who got us the right to vote, because when women, white women, women of not the global majority are in leadership in revolution and human rights and fighting for, we don't include the other intersections. We only want to increase our own status. When you look to women of color fighting for change in human rights, in the queer community, in the disabled community, in any intersection, you will find women of color as the people to be looking to. So I invite you, do a Google search, look for women in pioneership, look for women at the forefront of positive change and progression for this country as well as many others, and you will find usually a woman of color 99.9% of the time.
I wanted to expand on the Hillary Clinton thing. So it's
Yes.
anecdotal, but it speaks to exactly what Sister was talking about, which is I have a friend who, she is a feminist, like she's very, feminist, all that good stuff. But and just to be clear, she's white. And when 2016 rolled around, we got to talking, and we're very open politically. And she voted for Gary Johnson, who is a third-party libertarian jackass. And I asked her, what was your rationale there? Like, why wouldn't you vote for Hillary Clinton? Like, you're a feminist, and this is your single best shot at breaking the glass ceiling. There has not been a woman who's come close to Hillary Clinton, for better or worse, when it comes to breaking that barrier. This is your shot, and you're voting for a libertarian who's not going to win. Like, he's not, and he's the dumbass anyway. So why are you doing that? And her response, which really just kind of it so succinctly summarizes what Sista's talking about, which is my friend's response was, well, I didn't like her. She's a, and then she used the word for female dogs. I don't want to cuss. But that's what she described her as. Okay. There is this, and so within white women, even when it comes to white women, there is this disconnect of solidarity with their own gender, because I think that some white women want to ingratiate themselves to white men to prove that they are, quote unquote, one of the boys.
It's misogyny.
Exactly. It's internalized misogyny, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's internalized misogyny. They have to prove that they're one of the boys, and they do that by saying, "Oh, I'm going to be so different. Pick me. I'm voting for Gary Johnson. Pick me, please." And because they're just so not like other girls, basically.
We come back to white women are the worst perpetuators and perpetuators of white supremacist culture.
And then to connect that, and just to quickly connect that to Stacey Abrams, that it's that on steroids, because Stacey Abrams doesn't look like them, and there is this inherent thing in a lot of people. They can't connect with somebody that doesn't look like them. It's like a basal thing. It's like an inherent tribalism where there is a disconnect. And Stacey Abrams doesn't look like those white women. And she is a woman. So it's intersectionality, right? She is double screwed in that regard because she has to deal with pick me, I'm one of the boys, but also has to deal with I also don't look like you. And so then that's an even larger group that is going to be pushed off. So, yeah, I'll stop talking about it.
A comment says misogynoir, because that is a whole different
it is
aspect. It's misogynoir.
It's the intersection of both the misogyny as well as the anti-blackness built into the same system. It's a word that I don't think most people know, but that's exactly what was happening. And I appreciate you, Nemo, for naming that, but like it very much is part of the connection to it, because at the end of the day, I have experienced that in different positions. When I took leadership in different positions in my life, the people who actually was the most problematic wasn't the men, which is what I expected. It was the women, yes, that I thought I could trust. And it was clear that that was not true. And at the end of the day, we then learned to operate differently. But the numbers, like the thing that I want to make sure that like people are not walking away from, this is not just like hearsay or anecdotal. The Stacey case, the Stacey run is evidence of the number difference. Like you actually have proof because you can now see the number difference and operate from that. Because I think that's really important, because I don't think people catch that part, because the numbers do matter in that instance. Thanks.
I want to go back to something real quick that Nemo mentioned, and I believe I had a segment on that. I may not have posted it. In any regard, the German Bundestag, which is essentially the German parliament, is comprised of 736 seats, and it contains essentially a mix of various parties, and therein lies sort of my question coming up. There are three main parties. It's basically the traffic light coalition with red, green, and yellow. And then we have the opposition, which are four parties. In all, I believe that the Germans have a selection of like 20 plus parties to choose from. It's like the worst liquor store ever. You can get drunk on any form of color and political affiliation. And what caught me was what Nemo said, which is such an American condition that if you do not vote for Republican or Democrat, it is automatically a wasted vote. And as far as the outcome is concerned, that proves to be true, right? If you vote for little libertarian dude, yeah, you're going to sort of have a protest vote, but you're certainly not going to positively affect what is going to potentially befall all of us. At which point are we going to vote for other parties than the other two to make a meaningful difference? Because we do have more parties. We have the Green Party, we have all kinds of parties, like 7, I think, that are votable, that can put up candidates. Why not? When are we going to just break this and just potentially fall flat on our face for probably 4 years because we basically tore this entire thing up? But what we're doing right now and what we have been doing is certainly not working.
It's all about money. It's all about where the money, the advertising, the push, the PR goes to, and it always goes to the donkeys and the elephants.
Well, that is true, but that does not mean that the other candidates don't exist. We are so conditioned to say that, oh, it's a wasted vote if I do that, that we'll never see change.
There's an answer, and so there's a couple parts to it. Number one, the way that American government is structured, it's not a parliamentary system, which that by itself makes a two-party system almost required because it's not parliamentary. In a parliamentary system, even though there is still a trending towards a two-party dichotomy, like you see that in the UK, for example, you have Tories and Labour, even though there's like 5 other parties. But even though parliamentary systems do sometimes still trend towards a two-party dichotomy, because of its structure, it's less likely to, it's more conducive to having a multi-party system, right? That's number one. Number two is ranked choice voting. If your question about when do we start voting for third parties, when ranked choice voting is a thing. It's a thing, and unfortunately, because of our Constitution, states they are the ones that basically run their own elections, right? So you can't like make a federal law that says, "Hey, ranked choice voting is a thing," or at least I don't think that you can. I'm pretty sure that's not a thing. But
it's two sides of the same coin, though. It's literally two sides. I'm an anarchist. I'm a proud anarchist. I'm an animistic anarchist, and I don't vote red or blue. I think they're all trash. They are.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's two sides. Love, hate. Same thing, different sides. It is just a whirling dervish of nonsense, and nothing gets done. And
whirling dervish of nonsense. I'm stealing that.
Yes.
Yoink.
Yes.
But yeah, so ranked choice voting is the pathway forward. It has been implemented in a handful of states. Alaska very recently, and most famously, just introduced it. And look what happened. Alaska, which is a very red state, put in not only a Democrat but an indigenous woman.
I want to remind you, Sarah Palin came from Alaska. That's like principal of a homeschool. And this is what ranked choice voting did for the state.
So ranked choice voting
for those who are unfamiliar with the terminology, can you explain what it actually entails?
Yeah. So ranked choice it's a little complicated. It's easier whenever you have like visual aids, but basically
high school, dude. High school.
Yeah.
Prom king and prom queen.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like you rank your candidates by preference, right? And so, like for example, let's just use the 2020 election as an example. Okay, so everybody ended up voting for Joe Biden in the primary, or he became the nominee because he was the most likely to win or whatever. And thankfully, he did win, so that's great. But me, I am a filthy, disgusting leftist. I am so damn left. I wanted Bernie Sanders so damn bad. I wanted that man and his grumpiness up in that White House. Thank you very much.
Grumpiness.
It was the best, right?
I would. The mittens.
And the mittens
were amazing.
Legit, I'm gonna get some wall
so
art. I found some wall art with him like sitting in the mid. I'm getting that, putting it on this wall that's painfully blank. But nonetheless, anyway, ranked choice voting, I would say Bernie Sanders is my number one, right? And then I might say, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren is my number two, Biden is my number three, and that's it. I'm just going to leave the rest blank. And then somebody on the other side might say, well, I mean, I don't like Trump, so I'm going to pick like, I don't know, Ted Cruz or some shit, even though he wasn't running. Ted Cruz will be my number one, so on and so forth. And then depending on how the majorities pan out with that, either your first pick will get knocked off and then your second pick comes up. So basically, if Bernie doesn't get enough votes, even though I ranked him as number one, that he gets knocked off, and all of that then goes to my second person, right? And that's how it works. It's much easier with visual aids. I encourage everyone, if you want to go learn about ranked choice voting, it sounds a lot more complicated than it is. I'm not great at explaining it.
It's the bubble things. It's the bubble things, y'all. It's the fill in the blank. You get number two pencil, and you sit there with the sheet that's green, Scantronic, whatever. That's what it is, and which I think is classist. I'm looking at it right now, and it looks very difficult to read. And my thing is, if I can buy and sell a stock. Oh wait, hold on. I just sold a stock from the Netherlands right now, securely on my phone. Why can't we vote? Why can't we figure again? I'm very big about seeing patterns. If y'all haven't noticed, I'm neurodivergent, if that's not obvious. There are each sector of a career. We all have different language, right? And so what I notice and observe is we're very siloed in our careers. So if somebody is a tech person and they're building a database or whatever for us to do things on our little screens here, why can't that same technology be applied to voting? Just someone freaking make it. and get a municipality at a local level. Let's go market 10 of them. We go do a demo, get them to buy in, and we slowly build it out through the country. That's how we do it.
That's where I truly see the upside of blockchain. Ginger.
Real quick, I actually have shared a creator who is working on Discord to create a solution to the loss of TikTok and other things. Audience question, Veronica's path. How did states with ranked choice make the shift? And also Digital Sister, I have my hand up on behalf of her. So volleying that out. So I think the ranked choicing one is for Nemo.
Yeah,
there.
let's get the ranked choice out of the way real quick.
Okay.
I'm going to speak to ranked choice too, but go ahead.
Okay. So basically, the really short version is it's basically what I mentioned earlier. States run their own elections, so state governments run their own elections, and so it really sucks for like red states because you're kind of screwed. But they got enough people in the legislature to agree to make ranked choice voting a thing in the state. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so really quickly, ranked choice is very challenging, and there's no way for that. Just so that we're clear, all the 50 states, I can't even imagine them changing it to that model. I do agree with some pieces of the conversation, but let me just tell you, mail-in is the most important part, but ranked choice failed in New York because Eric Adams being in position versus Maya Wiley. I'm letting y'all know, like, I don't know if you saw what was going on in New York because it's an urban environment. Mm-hmm. New York got the worst side of that deal, and I know people don't think they know that, but that's exactly what happened. We ended up with the second black mayor. Mind you, the first black mayor was run out by Giuliani and police riots. Yep. And we have a black person who is a police fronted person. Like, I know y'all don't get like why it's problematic because you need to hear different conversations, but literally we have a quote unquote law and order person who is a replica of Dinkins. And if you think about, I can go into more details, but if you think about like Marshall, who's a SCOTUS, who was the first black SCOTUS, being replaced by Clarence Thomas. That's the analogy of what New York is dealing with right now.
For the
if you don't understand that analogy, Giuliani. I don't know what else to do.
Watch Giuliani, What Happened to America's Mayor, for a little history lesson on what Digital Assista is talking about with Dinkins and Giuliani and his off-duty police and firefighter invading the city hall so Giuliani could get the office of mayor of New York and run out the first black mayor, who was amazing. Also looking at Dinkins because he was wonderful.
He didn't do anything wrong. The thing that he did wrong was also making sure that people like me living in Harlem were granted opportunities. And that outrage turned like
radical leftists again.
Again, right. So like we can have a whole different conversation about that, but I needed to name that and not walk away from that. So ranked choice did not work in New York City. But I do want to speak to this conversation about the different parties. I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I got smoke for the Dems in all the ways in which there's problems that happens with that. But I also have smoke with other groups because they still have disrespect for black voters. Like, I don't care. I look at it from policy, not money. Right? I look at the policy and the laws that are being put in place. I look at it from a completely different level. And I get really frustrated sometimes because people who I know are supposed to be on my side making statements that's like, are you listening? Did you watch? Which law is happening? As everyone says, well, no, it's the money, it's the corporations, it's that. You know what I only care about? Which law is being enacted right now that comes after me and my people? That's like literally is all I'm asking. And if Dems are in position Like what? I can't remember the state. I wish I could remember the state right now, y'all. So please forgive me because I can't. But there's a little state legislature where Dems had won more recognition in that state legislature, and that particular chair had decided to change the rules. That all of a sudden, because the number difference between the Republicans and the Democrats was only two more Republicans than Democrats. Democrats were trying to push in bills, and then all of a sudden they make up a new rule where now the Democrats need 16 of the approval of the Republicans to just introduce a bill. Please pay attention. Because in that instance, you can blame the Democrats if you want to, but they literally now have no control because they needed to get half, more than half, of the Republicans to sign on to a bill to protect their community.
I mean, unfortunately,
understanding that level of detail.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we also see that, I mean, at the national level, and I mean, kind of like it's not the rule change, that piece we don't necessarily see, but we certainly see that in the Senate with the filibuster, because that's essentially what you're describing, that they effectively set up in that state legislature, where in the Senate it is inherently anti-democratic, right? That's the whole point of the Senate, you need it. The filibuster is this stupid policy. It's not written in the Constitution. It's not set in stone. It can literally be changed by a majority vote, but they just don't do it. But the filibuster requires that you have 60 votes on something to break cloture, and then you can actually vote on the bill. And the crazy thing is everybody thinks that the filibuster is somebody sitting up there and talking. That's what it used to be back in the day.
I can think of a recent example who has been shutting down a legislative...
Minnesota.
Yes.
Yep, she's been
that
filibustering by reading books, and she's doing everything she can for what 6-7 weeks now out of 90 days to keep anti-trans kids laws from coming into place. She's my God, she's a queen.
There's also another effort doing the same thing in Nebraska, and it's a multi-person effort, and they fully intend on filibustering the entire session. Now. So the one thing to keep in mind is that there is the talking filibuster, which is the thing that we all like assume the filibuster is. In the Senate at the national level, that is not the filibuster. The filibuster is literally at the Senate level, somebody in the party, and I don't even think they have to name themselves, just says we intend to filibuster. That's it. It's an email. They don't have to do anything. They send an email. And then it's like, okay, well, you don't got 60 votes. Too bad. Sorry. Nope. We're not going to do anything. That is the current filibuster. It used to be a talking filibuster, and then it magically changed around the civil rights era. Imagine that. Now it's this crazy ass thing that we got. So there is a utility behind the filibuster. I've heard compelling arguments for it, right? I don't accept our current version of the filibuster. You have to talk. Make whoever it is talk. You talk. You sit up there and you suffer if you're going to stop this.
Yeah, but if you're 97 years old, you need your sleep. You can't stay.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
That ain't happening.
The lady that's down in Nebraska who's been filibustering to keep anti-trans bills from passing, she came in with strep throat and she spoke for 8 hours every day for 5, 6, 7 weeks. She's been coming in, rain, shine, sick, healthy. She's been coming in and speaking for 8 hours. To filibuster. And the reason why she's having to do that, number one, is because she is a woman. So she has to do it in the absolutely firmly established and cemented style. Otherwise, she'll get brushed aside. But
there was somebody asking.
Sorry.
I don't know if you caught that, Ginger. Somebody was asking whether we get ranked choice in Minnesota, and I just looked it up. It was actually introduced by Kelly Morrison, and considering that Minnesota is pretty blue at this point, at all
that's
levels,
a possibility.
It is a possibility.
I think there is a strong possibility. And the other two states right now, I believe, are Maine and Alaska, who have already ranked choice. Nevada
correct.
is looking at it.
Yeah. So just right quick, just to expand on this. I'll provide names like that people can go. So I literally just Googled Minnesota ranked choice voting. The first result is Fair Vote. Okay. So there are groups. There are all sorts of groups. Now I'm going to name the big ones, and people might have issues with one of them because somebody did some corrupt shit. I don't give a fuck. Go find whatever group makes you happy with what I'm talking about, and then go and give them money or give them time or give them something. Voter registration and mobilization efforts. It's not about donating to your candidate. I mean, you should donate to your candidates if you can, whether it's money or time. But
especially if you do it monthly, like a
yes,
small amount monthly.
Monthly is the way to go. Yes, monthly is the way to go. I have a video on that. Monthly is the way to do it. Now, mobilization efforts. The reason that Georgia, my state, the reason that blood red Georgia went blue in 2020 and in 2022, sort of, is because of voter outreach efforts. It's because, to be clear, of Stacey Abrams, who ran voter outreach and registration efforts going into urban population centers and saying, hey, guys, this is the form. You don't have to do anything. Here's the form. I got a pen. Let's get you registered to vote. It takes 2 seconds. Putting up kiosks everywhere. Calling people, texting people, hey, are you registered to vote? Here's the day. Here's the place you need to go to. Here's the thing to sign up for a mail-in ballot, because you can still do that in Georgia for now. So that's what all of these groups do. Now, the groups that I'm going to list, if you got problems with them, I don't care. Go find another one that does the exact same thing. Rock the Vote, When We All Vote, Fair Fight, and then I think Fair Vote. The New Georgia Project for Georgia specifically. There are plenty of other ones, and all of these different ones, they've all been started by big names. So When We All Vote, that was started by Michelle Obama, or am I mixing up? Actually, I think When We All Vote was started by Stacey Abrams.
But why would I vote? Why would I vote? Why would I vote when men are in legislation making decisions about my freaking ovaries? Why do I give 2 hoots? Why do I care?
I can tell you why.
I mean, yes, please go ahead.
I can tell you why. So here's the thing. I love that question because it comes up a lot. You know what? As someone that's in the black community, do you know how many times even black men show up going like, why should I bother? Because my life isn't changing. Mm-hmm. I have to remind them their life isn't changing because their state legislature is the reason that their life isn't changing. Mm-hmm. You're not voting for the president because the assumption is...
They want you to not vote.
Wait, say that one more time.
Who, me or her?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to really absorb what you were saying.
Yeah. I get that all the time. It's as a black person... There are many instances where black people are, basically saying, why bother? Because my life doesn't change. Why bother? Because what happens to my day to day isn't changing. Right. Do you know what I have to say to them? You're blaming the president. You ain't blaming your state legislature or your council member down the street. You're not asking where that money from the federal government is actually going.
Oh,
the reason why you don't want to vote is because of what's happening to you on a day-to-day ain't got nothing to do with the president. Until there's a catastrophe. When there's a catastrophe, you don't want the president showing up.
Okay, he's excited. I'm going to butt in on behalf of the host.
I'm just saying. I can go on with this particular one. The reason is you have lost track of where the funding and the things that happen for you in your life and where it comes from. You are assuming that the president is where it's coming from, and you're mad at the president for something the president hasn't done. If you do not understand the distinction of states' rights, if you don't understand the distinction of state legislatures, you are asking for your life to change while literally not paying attention to who's screwing you over.
Host.
That's great.
It goes back to the very beginning almost of tonight's conversation. If anyone wants to have the opportunity to complain, to put their finger out and point at a misstanding, the way to earn that privilege is by voting.
Yeah.
Not voting, not making your voice heard as much as it is diminutive by putting an X somewhere, is a disservice first and foremost to yourself. Now, granted, I don't have a uterus. I am not being legislated. I am not being told that I have to give birth because my uncle decided that I'm the object of his desires. But I can guarantee you that tons of men are right behind you, voting for the same thing that you want. And in order for us collectively to see this through, we all have got to vote. And that's been my bitch fest for the last couple of months already. It's like, people, in order to make change, you have got to vote. Because a war, any form of, let's just say, interaction that is connected to inflicting damage, there are no winners. We've seen that throughout all of history. And yes, voting might be naive when we only have two parties to choose from. But I'd rather have you do a protest vote for a libertarian.
Right.
And earn the right to say, you know what, that shit stinks. But at least I voted.
Because that's what I struggle with, is that my person, like, as an anarchist, and I'm nature. I'm a tree hugger, like, hardcore. If I live in the woods all day, live there, I would. But those are my personal beliefs. I understand this whole, it's a bird, we got to pick a side, blah, blah, blah. I know I would be fantastic in the political arena. I'm a great leader. And I just I don't want to pick a side. Don't put me in a box.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm automatically resistant to it. And then I'm like, that's BS. I don't want to deal with it.
So I run into this all the time because
Nemo, pause. Let's get the audience question real quick.
Yes. The question was asked, and specifically to Ash. How can we start the AI people study process? You are our info cruncher, our number cruncher, our...
So you just pick a timeline.
Innovative thinker, honestly.
So let's pick a data set. So let's say the last 4 or 5 years, whatever. And we are going to extract every single text so when anything that is spoken on the floor is put into text, you people that type this information, then it goes to the Library of Congress and they document it. So we just connect to the back end of the API. They already have an API. I've already looked. You take that API out, you extract the text from every single time they've had a session. So it's not just about them getting up to say, speak a bill. It's everything that is in public record, and we analyze it for patterns. And then we apply the same insert science data stuff, because that's not my expertise, to this project. And that's how you do it. It's fairly simple. I just think it's not done because it's more of they just keep trying to throw crap out to distract us. I don't know. But yeah, I would love to do it. It's just not my skill set.
Yeah.
Wait, can you explain that a little bit better? Because I'm a little bit confused by where you're trying to frame that.
Okay, so there's a thing called crisis mapping. I don't think you were in here yet or not, but it blew my mind because I know about cymatics and how the military is able to read things from very far away, and because it's basically measuring sound waves and how far apart they are from you as the observer, and that's how you can read things. Okay, that's satellites, whatever. Again, I'm not a scientist, and I cry in math class.
I did too.
Fractions make me cry. But basically, it's called power law theory. It's like string theory, and you can, with large, massive amounts of data sets, you can analyze things. So I was saying earlier, like murmuration, how birds fly, or schools of fish. we are able to analyze those patterns and predict where they're going to turn next. It's these long ass equations that you see, you know, in those stereotypical college movies that I don't have any comprehension of, because I went to grad school for a master's in public administration. My field is studying government. I don't know crap about math. And that's why I keep saying things are siloed. But if we apply the same techniques and technology modalities that we do in the tech field, just freaking apply it. Like literally how the Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, whatever, like let's apply that to the politicians. Let's review their data.
I mean, ultimately, just to piggyback off that, Ash, we are animals. And I remember seeing a show. I'm not sure if it was like a Josh Gates show, but somebody had gone to, there's two kinds of gibbons. And because of the environmental factors, we're getting the stage hook, as it's called in my industry. There's two kinds of gibbons, and one is very like harmonious, and another is very warlike and very tribally fighting. What you say about looking at nature, if we zoom out and forget that, well, just completely disregard. We're not fucking special. We're still animals. And we are still prone to those animalistic tendencies, the reptilian brain, as you will. And yeah, I'm trying to remember God. But yeah, they showed how environmental factors and resource availability is a huge motivator between peaceful societies versus warring and constantly in conflict societies with particular primates or apes, one of the two. I think it was gibbons specifically.
So was that 15 minutes? What does that mean? I don't know what I'm getting in trouble with.
I didn't know what it meant either. You're not alone.
The 15 minutes means that we usually, I'm trying to time cap the entire show here at about 2 hours roughly. We're already at 2:15, so it's basically a countdown timer, as in let's just slowly but surely wrap this up so we can all go back to having lives and crash other people's lives.
Okay, so really quickly with the answer that I just got with the combination, because let me do my basic premise, and then I'm gonna leave it here because I think that there's a conversation that we probably should have again. Probably it may happen next Friday. We can see where it goes. But here's my answer. There is no tech fix for the human condition. We keep trying to come up with these extra solutions, and our problem is human. Mm-hmm. Our problem is about people who want to erase history and not deal with reality. We have people who want to keep their privilege checked in place and not ever have to feel uncomfortable. We are having a really difficult time about having the way in which we're now introducing technology to try to fix some of the worst problems that we have, because we think that the technology can fix it, but it can't, because the technology is only going to replicate who and what we are. And the first thing we have to accept that some of us are horrible.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to fix it. I need to be very clear on that. This is literally getting a big, giant ass mirror and being like, well, based on statistics, very like sciencey, no emotion, the data says contrary to that. You mentioned the word George Soros in every time you're in Congress, you've mentioned it a total of 1,500 times. So I feel like there is a way that we could present this in a sciencey thing to be like, yeah, you're the problem. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be fixed, but I think it's a way to analyze a pattern.
I have a like, even that reaction for me. I'm going to stop because I know you have a question from the audience, but please explain to me. I need y'all to answer this question for me. Everyone right now. When Ron DeSantis basically sent out a tweet saying that Bragg was a Soros-backed DA, right?
I don't get it.
I recognize it's an anti-Semitic dog whistle.
No, but wait. Did the media talk about it as an anti-Semitic dog whistle?
No.
Did it talk about it as an anti-black dog whistle?
No.
No, ma'am.
Did you hear
the media
that?
also didn't? The media also didn't pick up on the where woke goes to die.
Yeah.
None of that.
And
Right.
not to put my own crown on me. Well, the thing is, I'm maybe, and I don't want to take the liberty to say that I was, but it seemed to me that I was the first white creator to actually pick up on the definitions. Like, wait a minute, there is something much larger at play, and I'm sure within the vastness of TikTok land, many others have caught on to it as well and probably produced something. I just didn't see it. But to me, it was readily apparent that this is verbiage abused and very definitively geared towards essentially, well, pointing at a group.
Yeah.
And
othering people. Real quick, I want to address the chat real quick, specifically Loki. My job is to represent you as the chat, and you're gonna get the fiery side of me, because I don't like when somebody does not respect boundaries when I have established them in the chat. So you're gonna get spicy Celtic Ginge right now. When we have a certain topic going and you keep spamming the commentary, and you've been wonderful in that chat up until the last 10 minutes, my job is to. It is an honest question, and I already told you the answer to that. Bring it up on a different live. But when you keep pushing that boundary, you get this. You get the ginger snap. So I'm going to tell you from my face, from my chest, with all my teeth, it is a valid question. It's a wonderful question, but it is not for this live. KK?
What was the question?
I'll message you both later. I don't want to give it. I don't want to give it airtime. I already gave it too much.
So
I'm sorry to waste our time on this live.
I wanted to pick up on one thing about the woke thing. So I was watching a political creator that I adore, and he brought up an excellent point, which everybody needs to start associating in their head when they hear it. So the usage of the word woke is the modern version of the Yahtzee usage of the word Jew. It is the exact same thing. You can go, and I encourage people, because I tried to do this, but I couldn't find like a good one that could like fit into the live. But go and look up any number of speeches that were done in Yahtzee Germany and replace the word Jew with woke. And it'll fit almost perfectly. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
I don't say the word, but I'm going, because I don't like the word, but it's the UPP word that has been applied to black women. Yeah. It's the word that's been applied to white women who refuse to accept their roles. It's the new word.
Yeah. Yeah. So
the one distinction I want to say is that I won't actually disagree with like using it in that variable, but woke is AAVE.
Yes,
it's African American English vernacular, and even though it does apply for other groups and is being used for other groups, please understand the original origin. Woke was us saying there's injustice happening. Pay attention. Right? Right now, woke is being used as a black code that now is woke codes. Most Jewish people, don't get me wrong, I understand the plight. I know how bad this happened, and I know all the spaces in between. But Jewish people weren't named in some of these laws. We're watching the laws change again. Black code laws are being rewritten with woke in them. Is it expanding and adding to a whole bunch of other people? Yes, I am not discounting that. I'm including those communities. But the origination of woke is AAVE. It was our word to talk about how do we stop the bad things happening in this country. And anti-woke is the complete opposite of what we were trying to do.
Yeah, it's a co-opting of it.
It's a complete co-opting,
and it's turning it into a buzzword and it losing all meaning, like socialism and communism.
Yeah.
Nobody can actually define it when you put them on the spot. They don't realize how socialism impacts their lives, for example, and it went the way of social justice warrior, although that partially went bad because of white women and reactionary response. But that aside, it means to devalue the word, devalue the people who hold those ideals. It's meant to devalue goodness and kindness and humanitarian efforts.
Yeah. So,
but see, he's a military person. This is what, again, I go back to that Moms of Liberty and all this whole institution. Like, y'all got to understand. I read on my page one time, I read the federal budget because I'm very big about, like, what you said, Shireen, about when I asked you, like, why vote or whatever. I loved your answer because you're right. When Tyree Nichols was murdered, I read the Memphis City budget on my page. I think I made three-minute videos. And people were like, holy crap. And I even made a pivot table in Excel and I broke all the budgets down. I was like, y'all, they're literally spending 1% of their budget for housing and community, right? And it was like 60% or something for police. I'm like, well, obviously there's your issue, right? So I totally, listen, I'm 44. I literally just lost my point mid-freaking sentence. If any of you young ones are out there, that will happen to you. Oh my God, what were we just talking about?
You're fine, Ash. I have brain fog. You're fine.
I'm glad you asked the question. I also am glad that you pushed back a little bit because I think when you're asking the questions, people ask that question a lot, and I always find it fascinating. The thing is, why did the scorpion thing have to exist in a black? Right?
Yep, exactly.
There's only one reason, is because you are manufacturing criminal stats and causing criminal data to be increased.
Yes.
To basically turn around and over police a whole community.
Yes.
And then say you're saving everybody because of George Floyd.
We're keeping them safe.
Using George Floyd's death as justification for money in your county that is literally killing other black people, and you're not asking questions about where the heck that money came from to even put that task force together.
Correct.
That's
right.
The question you should be asking, but then you also should be voting out those people who are setting up those special task force.
So,
well, that was DOJ. That was a grant. That was a grant from DOJ.
Special task force are only in black areas.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Yeah, then I did a whole thing about Cop City and the police foundation. But again, it all relates back. So, because I started analyzing DeSantis in the press and I was reading newspaper archives. There's only one mention of him actually torturing people in Guantanamo Bay. If you look at anything else that's written after this date of this, it was something in the Tampa Bay Times in mid-2000s. He said, his Wikipedia page is like, it's literally a general or something quoting like, well, DeSantis made sure to follow the Geneva Convention when politely tucking in the prisoners at night and reading them bedtime stories. It's such BS, right? But people need to understand, these are indoctrinated machine killers. And I'm sorry if people are military, it's not disrespect, but like they indoctrinate the hell out of you, have you go do things that are atrocious, in my opinion, and then turn around, make you come home and are like, oh, sorry, you got to figure out how to put yourself back together now. So that's the kind of psychotic person that we're dealing with. He is an attorney. He's a white man. He knows how to play the game. I see him around here all the time. That's why I keep saying it's the root. This is a huge root here.
So just right quick with Ash. So this is an example that I've mentioned before. Whenever people come to me and say, you know, why should I vote? And this happens very frequently in leftist circles. They typically will, like, far leftists will say both sides are bad. I'm not voting, or I'm voting Green Party, or libertarians also do it. And then people who are politically disengaged will also do it. Now, they do it because they want to appear intellectually superior, whatever. So The answer, this is an example that I always use. The 2014 election is why you don't have control over your own body right now. It's a butterfly effect. Every single election matters. The 2014 midterms, that's why you don't have control over your uterus right now.
I've never had control over my own body. That's what I'm saying. This is what we're saying. And when people, you got under, I'm 44 years old. When my grandmother first touched me unconsensually when I was 4, I can't, this is what I'm saying. Y'all speak from this perspective and you have such biases. I don't care about the votes. Dead ass, just going to the doctor is traumatic AF.
Hold up.
As a woman.
Notwithstanding the traumatic experience, the just unconscionable act, how else do you want to change it? If not through getting the right people in the right positions. And I know how hopeless this sounds, how ridiculous it sounds when you feel that your vote doesn't matter. But how else are you going to change that systemic ill that we've experienced in a variety of ways, particularly women in this country?
They don't want you to vote. Vote out of spite. Be a conscientious voter out of spite, because they don't want minorities, marginalized groups. They don't want us voting because we swing the whole thing. We've seen that in 2020.
I'm not saying I don't vote. I'm just saying I have been involved in
Ash,
one way or another my whole life, and it doesn't freaking change.
Right.
Ash,
so
Ash, I
yes.
have something for you, and
Yes,
I know and I'm only going to give you a little bit of this, because even my answer, you and I should probably have a sideline conversation about this, right?
Yeah.
I do want to have this conversation, but let me just explain something to you. These parents' rights laws actually takes your autonomy away from you even more so than what you just described, right? It's actually worse. What they put in place in Florida means that even as a child, you would not have any autonomy from any parent that would do anything that you just described.
Mm-hmm.
That even people who you could go to in your schools or any place else would have to report back to your family what they heard first before reporting it. You are saying something to me. I know you're in a state that I can tell you that it's actually worse for the children behind you.
Behind me. Okay.
Behind you.
Yeah, okay.
It's worse.
Ooh.
There were levels of protection that you were granted, and 1557 took it from all those children. They now do not have the right to speak against your grandmother, your parent, or anyone else in that household that's given access to you, because parents' rights, adults' rights are more important than your child's autonomy. You would have no say. They would get to do whatever they want, and that the school, those who will report, would have to go to them before they can go to the state. And even in those moments, the state would say, your parents are first, the state is second. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's why voting matters, but the laws, understanding the laws actually matters even more. Because I hear the pain that you're saying, but I'm telling you, what you're arguing about completely dismisses 1557 right now. Because those children now don't even have that protection. They cannot go to a teacher or the principal or a counselor to be protected from their own parent.
Yep. Host.
All right, let's wrap it. We did the same thing last time. We're going to do it again. Quick fire round, 1 minute, one action item, one thing that you want to get out that you haven't gotten out. Keep it to 60 seconds so we actually can wrap this within some form of meaningful container. And I'm just going to pass the ball to Nemo because I'm really curious whether he can keep it to 60 seconds. Boom.
Yeah. So just to expand on the 2014 election, because it seems like there was a lot of people in chat that didn't quite understand my point there. What I was simply saying is that in the 2014 election, the Republicans got back the Senate. When the Republicans got back the Senate, Mitch McConnell became the Senate Majority Leader. Scalia dies in 2016. He stalls, doesn't allow us to replace Scalia. Then the court is then shifted one seat. And then Hillary loses. Trump comes in, fills that seat. Now you've got 5-4. Then 2 more go. All right. If we had maintained the Senate, it would not be 6-3. It would be 5-4. And one of those 5 is kind of a wishy-washy one. But the point is, it would be 5-4 conservative. It would not be insurmountable. That is why every single election matters. So to the people who say screw voting, because there was somebody in here who said screw voting, no. If you say screw voting, you are damning every generation, including yourself, to more suffering than you can possibly imagine. Roe fell because of that 6-3 majority. It could have been maintained because Roberts wanted that. So that's why every election matters.
Yes, every, local especially.
Appreciate you, Nemo. Let's, Ash, you are deep in thought. You got 60 seconds for us?
I'm going to work on learning how to use Discord, because that's where I'm trying to do some stuff. And I learned how to do markup yesterday. I'm trying to build my website out because I've had a couple interviews. I had the NPR interview. Oh, I was asked to be on Neil Cavuto, and then they canceled last minute, so that was hilarious.
Wow.
So
can I get your autograph now before it's too late?
Oh no, yeah,
you guys are great. I don't recognize hierarchies and stuff. I'm just a regular gal who likes to ride her bike and plant flowers. What else? Yeah, I'm just going to work on building a community because I love having these conversations and stuff, and then people come and want to help, but then my neurodivergent brain is like, oh my God, people, I got a turtle. I gotta hide now. I don't want to be perceived. So that's something that I'm going to be working on this week, and yeah, that's it.
All right, digital sister.
I have so much to say, but I'm going to say this very simple thing. Let's keep having these conversations. Let's talk about what action really looks like. But please, one more time, understand, there's one thing to say, things aren't working versus ignoring the laws that are being put in place that's going to destroy anything ever working. We are in a very different era of this country with these, what I will call woke codes. But I know this era because I have lived through this, and my parents, grandparents, and my elders have passed that down to me. I know what I'm witnessing. My hope is that people understand that it's one thing to disagree verbally and have this freedom of expression. It's another thing when it gets codified into law.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Ginge. Take it. 60. All you.
All right. I'm going to echo my normal broken record stuff. Take breaks from your activism. Take self-care. Take mental health breaks. There are other people beside you, behind you, and around you taking up this fight. Number 2, you see these creators down here. Bless those fucking cash apps, because they are giving you their emotional labor. They're giving you their vulnerability. They are giving you an education for free. Bless their cash apps and their charities, because that's a lot of heartfelt information we've gotten from these 2 people just right below me in the boxes. And I also want to remind you that it gets overwhelming. And we as white people, we want to think we can just change the world automatically. Think smaller, my babies. Think smaller. You can disrupt fascism, white supremacist culture, and patriarchy by going to help homeless people at a soup kitchen. You can donate clothes. You can find small actionable items in your local community to disrupt what is being pushed on society and the inequity and injustice on a very, very local and very personal level. So step outside of your comfort zone and look to activist groups, grassroots groups in your local area, and see what they need done. Did I hit 60?
All right. Yeah, probably a little bit longer, but that's okay. Let me see if I can get us out of here. To begin with, dial up essentially your local legislators and find out what they are working on, and then show up at your state capitol if you have time and if you have the ability to do so. Massive things have been moved in Michigan and in Minnesota simply because people showed up and made themselves heard. And we've just seen what happened in Tennessee with students showing up and just really being just vocal in there. that's how we start on the front end while we can't essentially vote on anything. And when we vote, obviously, broken record here show up. Other than that, I think the most important thing is the mods on the back end, keeping the entire machinery running. The chat mods, you guys are all phenomenal. Nemo, Sister, Ash, of course, Ginge. We'll do it again next Friday, shall we? Shall we?
Yes.
Ready? Yes? Yeah? Good?
Yes,
All right.
I mean, that'll be after the arraignment, so yeah.
And yeah, that should be a good one. And of course, all the audience, you guys rock. Thanks for being with us, and we'll just do it again next Friday. Much love to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm applauding all of you. I'm applauding all of you. Everybody in chat, everybody in panels.
Later.
Text that to me, please.